Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Ask the Trainer special about the Maxon Spring 2023 release. And I'm Jonas from the Maxon training team, and today I'm joined by Ellie, Darren, Ian, Chad, Max, Noseman, and Hashi. So we are a pretty big group. That's a record, I think, at least at this new streaming platform that we're using. And yeah, so Darren, Noseman, and I are going to show you some new things inside of Cinema 4D. Then Ellie is going to continue with Redshift. After that, we have Max talking about Magic Bullet, Hashi talking about VFX, Chad talking about Trapcode, Universe, and Forger, and finally Ian talking about the updates in ZBrush. So this is going to be very exciting. But before we start, I want to take care of the housekeeping. And I also think that everyone can already say hello, right? Hey, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining.
Yes.
Yeah, it's exciting to be so many people on the stream here today. So let's just dive in because we have a lot to show and limited time. So I'm going to share here. So here we go. I'm going to take care of the housekeeping here. So what you can see here is actually, my bad, the German events page. Now it's the English one. So here on the Maxon events page, under maxon.net/events, you can find all the events that we are doing. Ask the Trainer special of today. Tomorrow we're going to have another episode of VFX and Chill. Then there's also tomorrow another ZBrush webinar. Then Monday, demystifying post-production. On Thursday, we're going to have Maxon Color and VFX and Chill, and so on, and a lot of live shows and stuff. So that's one thing. Then if you missed a show or want to just rewatch it, just go to the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel, because here, this is the place where you can find the recordings. Also, when you're new to any of the Maxon applications, then you can always go to cineversity.maxon.net, and have a look at these great Getting Started series for all the applications. And then last but not least, I also want to share the Maxon Ask the Trainer exclusive Wear Shop, where you can type in the coupon code when you log in, and then you can order one t-shirt for free, and you only have to pay for the shipping. So that's it for the housekeeping. And I think we just start, right? Is everyone ready?
Let's do it live all the time.
Yes.
Let's do it.
So especially, I asked Darren if he's ready, because he's going to start.
Oh, I am. Okay.
Yes.
Sure.
Are you ready?
Ready
to share your screen?
I'm as ready as I'm going to be.
Okay. All right. I'm going to share your screen here.
Awesome.
There you go. You have it.
Wow. All right. Welcome, everybody. 2023.2. Amazing release across all of Maxon 1. So in Cinema 4D, a couple of things that I've been focusing on has been the new commander. So there's been a bit of, that's interesting. There's been a bit of an issue with opening it up. The keyboard shortcut should be Shift-C, as in cat. But if you are experiencing an issue there, then you want to go to your, strangely enough, command manager, and then you want to find the commander. There's 3 options here, and we want this one, the one that's plugin asset browser. And then all you need to do is just assign a shortcut if it's not there, or if it's mixed up with an old one. So just FYI. So
Darren, can you please hide that little thingy, because everyone can see it?
This little thingy?
Yeah, there's the hide button on the right of it. Yes.
Wow. So what is shocker? Cool. So the amazing thing about this is now the commander accesses everything, including capsules in Cinema 4D. This is almost like another asset browser. So we have everything here. Now, when we're not searching for anything, we're just going to get our categories when we select a one of the category tabs, right? But let's do a search like for the new. Well, actually, there's a new shader ball, so let's go. You know what? I think it's better to go ball, right? So we can change the view. We can adjust the size of the preview. We can view all of the content with BALL, or we can enable auto. So when we're in the object manager, oops, we got to pin that, don't we? So I'm going to click on the pin to keep that up. So if I'm doing something in the objects manager, then I'm just going to see objects. If I'm in the material manager, then I see just the materials and so on. So it's contextual. We also can show details, assign keywords, and access presets in Cinema 4D. So I have a number of just random presets that I've assigned the tag Darren to. And here they are. So I got some icon presets and
Is that me?
scenes. Yes.
Where are you using that icon? I'm curious.
It's actually in a different scene, but what I'm going to do is on the Redshift camera, I'll go ahead and I can drag it in there, or I can say load preset where it's also available. So we're seeing that these are the presets that are accessible. So yeah, anyway, you want me to do that, don't you? Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. And I can even, change the color, change your color. There you go. Now you're banana. Anyway, so let's see what else we have all the same filters like from the asset browser. And one of the coolest things is that when, like, let's say I'm searching for wood material and I want to ensure that I'm only getting the Redshift materials, I'll go ahead and say Smart Search Redshift dependent. And then I'll say wood. And let's say I want just those that are downloaded. I can also, let's see, where is it? Installed. There we go. We have this installed, yes or no. I'll say yes. So those are just the wood materials that I have downloaded that are Redshift. So that's pretty cool. And then I can save this as a smart search, so I can always get back to it. Yeah, that's really cool. So we have all the capsules here. This scene, which I use to show the, how am I doing on time? That good. Okay, great. So this scene that I used to show the radial symmetry, which is totally new in 2023.2, we took the symmetry from the symmetry modeling up here, the radial, and we've incorporated it into basically we replaced the old symmetry generator. The icon's the same. I think, is that the same icon? I can't remember. But now it contains all of the new symmetry options. So let's actually, like, if you want to sort of create your own watch face from scratch, then open up your Commander. Let's do a search for Rocket Lasso, and then let's go scenes. And oh no, am I spelling that wrong or something? Wow, how about that? Rocket. There we go. Okay, so this is actually the starting point for the scene, the FUI ring example file. This was this is just sort of like, you can pretty much read a watch right from here. So I'm going to go Shift C again. I'm going to get a symmetry object into the scene, and then I'm going to say, kit bash. So this whole thing is pretty much made up of these kit bash capsules, which were released a little bit ago. So we'll just get whatever, this guy in here, and I'm going to change the settings to radial, and then I can set the slices, and let's also turn down the size of this guy. So I'll just hold T while I click and drag in my view to bring that down. And I could even go to like my place tool and sort of put this where I want it, like so. And so I really just built up the whole thing using Greebles, the kit bash capsules within the Symmetry, and ended up with this. And I tweaked some materials. Again, I used the capsule or the commander to find materials and just drag them on in my view, and it was super fast. One thing I forgot to mention about the commander is that when you do see something that you like, or you know that you're going to be using a lot, like whatever, like let's say this guy, if you favorite it, then it actually floats up to the top of the list. So next time you search for it, it will appear at the top of your list. Has there been any questions about the commander or the radial symmetry?
Nothing on my side.
Okay.
That's awesome. That's awesome, though. It's so cool to see how you could quickly build a scene just with the kit bash tools and get in there and start creating. That's awesome.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
The new commander's really
Absolutely.
great. One of the amazing things about this new generator is that we can put as many things into it, and we don't have to be so sensitive to the hierarchy. It used to be that we'd have to like go in and
Add a null first, right?
that's right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Exactly. We'd have to group things. And that's not the case. So that really sort of, it's a subtle thing in the objects manager here, but it really allows for a more sort of fluid creative workflow, I think.
Yeah.
Cool. Another new thing is with ballooning. We now have support for Vertex.
Shall we show that later when we
maps.
go into simulation in general?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then I will show a few other things first, and then we go into simulation.
Cool.
All right, cool. So let me grab the screen here. So that's my screen now. So the next thing that I want to show is the new Thicken generator. And I have a few scenes to show that. And look at that. It's also kit bash capsules here. And they are also in a symmetry object. Here you can see that. And so the new Thicken generator can be found here in the generators menu, right? We just create something and we make an object a child of the Thicken, just with any other generator. Same thing with this thing here. And I'm going to hold down the Alt key to make it apparent immediately. And well, now you can see that I'm gonna show the lines here. So the Thicken generator has a lot of options, and so basically it's just thickening single polygons, so to speak. So it's creating a thick object out of a shell. And you cannot only control the thickness, you can also position the thickness, so to speak, to either start from, or to either go to one side or the other, to the inside or to the outside, which is very neat. And you can adjust the subdivisions. And what you see here is something where you can definitely see the difference between the two modes. Actually, the two modes are not just there to give you like a different interface, but these are also two different algorithms. And basic mode is not as accurate as advanced, but it is much faster. And you will notice that when you are working on very high dense meshes. So in this case, it doesn't really make a difference. So it's still really fast. But what this one has, and I'm going to dive into a few settings down here. Before that, I'm going to show you the subdivisions again. So,
and Fury from the chat says, "This thickens my heart. So cool." And,
that's
just
great.
warning that if that continues, you should probably see a medical professional.
Absolutely. So, yeah, you can define if you want to see the shell, the end cap, or the start cap, stuff like that. I will go into thickness later. But what I like here, or what I like to show here, are the perpendicular boundary and the preserve corners. So, what I want to show here is first perpendicular boundary. And that means that it's trying to create perpendicular thickness here. So in this case, for example, that was great. Let me have a look here. You can see that this is not perpendicular, right? But if I bring this up a little bit, you can see that it's creating a perpendicular edge. And the other thing where this is cool is up here on this one. That's why I brought this up. So if we go to advanced mode here and go with perpendicular, oh no, that was preserve corners. So here you can preserve the corners. And this way you would get like a flat shape here, or a flat shell. And preserve corners is also interesting here on that model, because what you can see on this shared edge is that it's not like one planar shell, so to speak. And this is where this option here comes in handy as well. So this way you can create a thicken that is really working. And again, of course, we can adjust the thickness now and do more stuff to this to make it look interesting and so on. So another project that I use this for is this packaging scene. So what I did here, actually, and you might have seen this in the release video, this is just a simple geometry that is rigged using joints. So here is the animation with joints. And what I like about Thicken is that I now just have to animate just the shell, like one row of polygons without any thickness. And then I can add the thickness later. So let's do this. I'm gonna hold down Alt and create the thicken generator. And now you can see that we get some thickness here. I'm gonna bring this down to 1 centimeter for now and bring the position to plus 100%, because we also have this backdrop in here. And if I bring it to minus 100%, you can see that it's intersecting with the ground here. So I do that. And then what I want to show is, let me first bring this thickness down to 0.05. So we have half a millimeter. And let me also go to, let's say, this frame here. And let's dolly in a little bit. So you can see a few things here. The first is that we get the thickness, but we don't have materials. We also see a few artifacts here. Let's first take care of the textures, because we need some selections for these. And we can simply create them from the thicken generator. So here are my materials. I'm going to add the material for the shell. And then I'm going to select the thicken and go to selections. And here we can also, expose selections for polygons, edges, and points. I'm just going to use the start and end cap here. And now let's go with the outside material and just place it on this one, I think it is. Yes. And let's assign the inside material and restrict it to this selection. So now we have this little box where you can see an outside texture, an inside texture, and one for the shell. And now let's go back to these artifacts. They are coming from overlapping polygons. And what we have here in advanced mode is also something, you can see that it's already fixed here, that is called resolve intersections. And this is taking care of exactly that. So this is also a quite neat feature. Yeah, and then all you need to do is just bring up everything that is in the scene, maybe adjust the shadows here. And if you press play, you can see this full animation. And the whole rigging process is much easier because you don't have to take care of a thick geometry, but you can add the thickness later using the generator. Right. The next one that I have also regarding the thicken generator is something that actually it's a great story about that. I was working on that on the train, on that scene. And I got a delay of 1.5 hours. I didn't bring any food. I didn't have breakfast. And I got hungry and even more hungry because I was constantly working on this scene, which looks so tasty. However, I survived, luckily. And here I used thicken to create the cheese thickness and the patty thickness here, also the tomatoes and also the onions and the salad. I used thicken for a lot of stuff here. And what I want to show you here is how you can use vertex maps to control the thickness. So what we have here, let's go to the patty. We have the thicken and we have a soft body simulation tag on it. And we also have this disk here. So this is the patty. And I'm going to create a vertex map on that. And let me select the vertex map now and use fields, delete the freeze, and instead use a linear field. I'm going to place that here outside of that. I'm going to make this +C and remap it with another contour mode curve. And now you can see that once I move this field to the left and right, then it will adjust the vertex map. Okay, so let's use this on the thicken generator. All you need to do is just dragging and dropping it into the thickness map input field. So here we go. You can already see that we have some thickness here and no thickness here. What I actually want is, well, first of all, let me get rid of the keyframes of the animation track here, and let's bring this up to 100. And also now in the linear field, we can set it up in a way that this part here also has some thickness because it's weight-based. Right now we have a weight of 0% here. That means no thickness. So let me bring up the min value here in the field to 25%, and there we go. All right, and now we can move this to the left and the right and adjust the thickness of the patty. So let's...
Yeah, now everybody's hungry.
Yeah,
and
let's
they're saying you got to add ketchup in the chat. So that's just so you know.
Yeah. So one thing that is important is when you want to animate this using simulation, you have to have follow shape here in mix animation on in the simulation tag. That's important. And now, yeah, I can just do funny stuff with that. Play the simulation and yeah, let it appear here as a full burger, and then I can use the field to create funny stuff with that and to blow it up a little bit, like so.
God, I'm starving.
Yeah, me too. Did you have breakfast, Darren?
No.
Okay.
I didn't have breakfast either, so
We're talking
I
about
am feeling
the
your
test.
pain.
And
when you were
and
on
we
the
are going to
train.
overrun by 1.5 hours today, so you're going to be in pretty much the same situation as I was.
Perfect.
Now my hunger is thickening.
All right.
Nice.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's the thicken generator. Another thing that I didn't mention is you can also drag and drop in polygon selections here, and then it would just thicken these selections. This can also be useful for some motion graphics setups, for example, for stylized stuff. All right, but now that we are on the topic of simulation, let me jump into
Jonas,
the Pyro
there was actually
updates.
a quick question
Yes.
about Thicken and UVs. So Ben was wondering, how does it affect UVs?
So
Copies.
it will create copies. The tricky situation is only the shell. So it will preserve the UVs of the end or of the start and end cap, but for the shell, there are no UVs basically. So you have to find a solution for that.
Thanks.
All right, cool. So in this one, I want to show you a few things regarding Pyro. And what you see here is just a little hole with some steam coming out. And the first thing that I really like is that Pyro is now reacting to lights in the viewport. That's a really useful thing if you light your scene, and usually you do that before you render. And yeah, you can also adjust the colors and stuff, so it's reacting to everything here. Speaking of colors, this is not the only thing where you can like add color. In the Pyro emission tag, we now have a color map, like a vertex map input, so you can control the color of the emission using a vertex map. And I created one here. You can already see it here that we have rainbow colors on this little strip here, and same here to show you what's going on. And yeah, to link the two, we simply need to go to the Pyro tag and just drag and drop this vertex color tag. Did I say vertex map earlier? I meant vertex color. And now we have colorized smoke, which is reacting to the animation here in the vertex colors as well. And this
I could eat that too.
It looks tasty somehow, in a weird way, but you're right.
Candy.
It looks a little bit tasty. So what you could use that for is also, for example, if you want to emit from like any object that has a material, a texture on it, you could read that texture, write it into a vertex map tag, vertex color tag, sorry, and then just emit the texture color. This is quite cool. So yeah, the next thing I wanted to show is if you scroll down in the Pyro emitter, you find many more noise settings. So this is actually the UI of the noise shader. So what you can do here is, for example, adjust the low clip and high clip, and once I do that, you can see that it's already reacting. Let's start this here from scratch. So not from scratch, but from the beginning. And of course, we can adjust the parameters, like we can play with the scale here. Let's bring this down to 200 or bring it up to 1,000. Let's see if that looks better. So yeah, you can play a lot. You have all the noise types here. So you can also go with the cell noise, for example, and all the others. You have all the options here. So that's also something I like a lot. And yeah, the next thing that I actually wanted to show in this scene, but I just redecided to go with a blank scene, and I'm just gonna create a little sphere with a Pyro tag on it, like so. And what I want to show you is that now if you have an absolute velocity with direction here, then you can choose between the local and global coordinate systems. Before, it was just the global system, but what that meant is that no matter how you rotated the object, in this case, the smoke and fire would always emit it upwards because the vector is y up. But now what you can do is you can just rotate this object and it will just work as you would expect. And this is very interactive and all animatable, of course. So you could create like a spray can that is rolling over the floor or stuff like that. And
Jonas,
of
real
course.
quick question.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Real quick question. Is that a good way to make clouds as well, or would there be like could you use Pyro to make clouds?
Yes, absolutely.
Sweet.
Absolutely. So another thing you can do with Pyro here is, for example, you could just enable the density grid here and then throw that into, hello? Oh, it won't react anymore. Great. What went wrong? All right. I'm going to fix this. And maybe, Darren, you want to show the balloon in the meantime?
One.
Just so that everyone knows, those multiple arrows you see, the cursors are StreamYard glitching out.
It's not a new feature.
Not a new
it's not a new feature. Yes. Darren, are you ready to share?
Yeah.
Not in the cloners.
I am ready.
Because I can still see StreamYard here on your screen.
Oh. Now what do you see?
There you go. You
see my
have the screen.
Watch face again? Okay, cool. All right. So so as I alluded earlier, ballooning now supports. Oh, why'd you do that? Now supports vertex maps, so that we can control the what parts are ballooning. And now this setup I spent a lot of time with. Let's go ahead and open it up.
Now, was this anyone in particular's likeness that you needed to do this to, Darren, or?
No. No, I wish I had a more entertaining answer, but no. But I'm now seeing a strange resemblance to someone we all know and love who's having issues with his computer right now. But anyway, so
what do you mean?
It's not you, man. It's totally you. Totally. It's just the head. You guys can't tell I have my hand up and over the eyebrow, and it looks just like Jonas. Anyway, okay.
In fact, could you apply that Jonas preset if you wanted the same sheen and
oh my gosh, thank you,
reflectance?
Boom
on here.
I wish these icons could be larger.
I'm breaking your teaching. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I just I was trying to process the question and actually try to think of, can I do that? But yeah. Okay, so let's see. I actually had to remesh this. This was also an asset from the asset browser. It's a classic one, actually. But I did have to use a remesher to remesh it to get some geometry that wasn't quite so dense. So let's solo the remeshed version, right? So this was, it's not perfect. There's overlapping geometry. There's still plenty of issues, but it's just enough to inflate and then use as a mesh deformer on the original model. So I actually have over here just that bit. And I'm just going to do a really rough and dirty example to show you how to get started. So we'll go simulation balloon, and it's already essentially on, though we don't really see much. The overpressure should be something beyond 1. So there's 2, and the whole thing is uniformly expanding over 30 frames. And here we need a map. So I'm going to go to point mode, select menu, set vertex weight to 0. So that's like 0 ballooning. And then let's go use fields, and I'll go with the spherical field here. Model mode, move tool, yay. Oops, wrong guy. Let's move that out there. I'll go ahead and keyframe this to come in over a couple of frames, like so. And then I'm going to take the vertex map and drag it into the map field in the balloon tab and press play. Now it's just going to inflate that part, right? And the rest of it will eventually be released. I do have this belted onto an object at the bottom, so it doesn't just fly away immediately. But, you know, I want it to, you know, I spent a lot of time sort of tweaking it and finding happy accidents and then sort of directing those accidents. And that's sort of how I ended up with that final render. But I, you know, increased the expansion time. I added a freeze with the grow mode on there, and let's see, this wants to be in additive mode, and this is probably going to whack out. Yep, it is indeed. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, there's plenty of tweaking to be done, but yeah, that's the basics. So let me just show you the. Oh, I'd like to show the render again. So don't tell him.
I'm already thinking of the superhero stuff I've done. Like, I'm gonna attach this to now some capes, some clothing. I'll make a balloon man. You're giving me ideas, Darren.
Balloon man.
I want to see whatever you do. So I did a screen cap of the ballooning with the vertex growing, and that's what we're looking at now. But yeah, so that's new in ballooning. Are there any questions about that?
Not so far. Not that I can.
No questions
No
here.
question.
Just
Not a
capes
question.
would be cool.
Oh,
All right.
I just want to add one thing about the balloon. In order not to have problems if you're doing vertex maps, make sure some of the points on the opposite side of the mesh are also at least selected to a certain degree, because if pressure is building only on one side of the mesh, which is something you cannot do in real life, you will have very odd motions, because ballooning is basically pressure. And in order to have pressure, you need to have an opposing side. You can't inflate a balloon that only has one side. That's called a burst balloon. So for better results, just make sure that there's maybe some weights on the other side just to keep it, or you use some sort of mix animation, pin or force to keep some of the points in check.
Yeah, and for all I know, I might have done that when I was tweaking the original scene. But yeah, so that's a really great point, because whatever may be going out, there is an equal and opposite reaction on the outside of it. So some are going in.
Yeah, it does make sense to create a second vertex map and throw the first one into the second one, and then remap it.
Blowing my mind.
Yeah, no problem.
that's too much. I can't even handle that.
We showed that several times and asked the trainer.
I did notice that in this scene, reducing the thickness helped reduce some of the issues that I encountered.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's all from me.
All right, that's great. Thank you. So
Can I add a couple of more things about simulations? There's a better and faster collision detection. So the collision detection mechanism algorithm has been optimized. So you'll see that you will get faster and better collisions with less of those what was that? Too many collisions errors and all that. And the second thing is that throughout the simulation core, there's been an optimization, which you will see in many cases, larger simulations are being handled by your VRAM and your GPU a bit better. So yeah, those are two other things that are sort of under the radar, but I consider them
that's right.
very important.
Yeah. So,
oh man, we didn't even show how the object voxel size changed in the emitter. It's now relative.
Yeah, it's a ratio.
oh yeah.
So
that's-
what? Yeah.
that's
So
true.
if we
I can
had,
show that in a second. So,
okay.
Yeah, what I wanted to show here in this one is that the Destructor force is now supported in Pyro. So what you can do is you can just create a Destructor force.
I didn't even know you switched your screen. I was still waiting.
No, I got
Cool.
it back. So let me adjust this size here, and let's just continue the playback. And now you see that it's cut off here. So you can use it this way, or you can also just invert it for Pyro so that you have like a box, and inside of that box Pyro can live, and outside that box it will be killed. So that's also a very cool one. So the other feature that Darren was just mentioning was here in the emitter, that the object fidelity is a new one. That's what you wanted to mention, right? Oh.
Yes.
Yeah. So
You got it.
more or less the emitter resolution, so to speak, of the emitter. That's the easiest way to to explain it in just one sentence. I would say we continue with the improvements to nodes with Nodesman.
I'm just replying to Anthony, and this is a general request. If you have crashes and all that kind of stuff, there's pretty much nothing we can do about it. We can say a few good words, tell you to hang on, but there's nothing we can actually do. Now, if you do want to send a scene that's posing problems, our emails and my DMs on Twitter are open, and we do that all the time. But if it's a crash, a hard crash, under specific circumstances, please contact Maxon support, because if there is something that was missed during development or a specific setup that causes problems, the Maxon is all over these kind of things. So please just send, mention what your configuration is, what hardware you have, and all that kind of stuff. That will help fix any potential problems.
Absolutely. All right. Are you ready to share your screen?
I'm always ready.
All right. So you got the screen. And
so I'm going to talk about nodes. Go to Chris Smith's website on his YouTube channel, Rocket Lasso, and watch them. I'm going to give you the timestamp, and then I'm going to take the rest of the day off. Right, I'm joking. Right. So, but anyone that hasn't watched the release video from yesterday, go. Chris is doing an amazing job showing the new features. We're just more fun to be around. So one of the features that I love that relates to nodes, both Redshift and scene nodes, is the new preset. So we can add now node presets to our preset manager. And the example I have here is, let's say I want to create my own, let's say, glass material, and I have this Redshift scene. So let me go, what's my renderer here? It's Redshift, good. Let's go here. I'm going to create it this way, standard material. That's how I like to make it. I'm going to call it glass. And I'm going to put it here on this. And let me turn on my Redshift layout. Fantastic. And there it is. We have some glass here. Let me turn it on just to make sure that this is working. It's not glass. Let's make it into glass. And I'm going to make a very, 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 very complex glass. And that's it. And now this material, which is called glass, I want to be able to find it. I don't want to go and remake it all the time. And this could be any material you want. Now you go up here, custom, you say save preset. I'm going to call this my glass 02. I did a test earlier. You select which database you want it in. You can create your own databases. And you're done. So from this point onwards, let's assume we didn't have this. I can go to my asset manager. I can say my glass. And this is the new glass I created. And you can do all the nice little trickery you want. One thing I like to do is if you want to create a preset. I deleted the material. I shouldn't have, because I want the preview. So I undo a couple of times. Let's assume you have this nice little preview here. You create your scene. You use your own material preview thumbnail thing. And what I like to do, press Command Shift. I think it's the Windows and the Shift and the S. I have a Mac keyboard on a PC. I select this. This is not a Cinema 4D feature. It's a Windows feature, the only feature of Windows Online. And then you go here, you right-click, and you say Update Preview. And that's it. Done. Your preview is there, and you can keep creating materials. And these materials, you can put them in databases. You can make your own custom database. Anyhow, you can do this with different aspects. You can call this a red material and go and make it red. So let's make it red. And there you go. So now you can say set preset and call this my red glass. And again, the process is the same. You go here and my red. There's my red glass. Click on it. Open up this thingy. Command Shift S. You can save a render. You can do whatever you want. Right click, update preview. Now I have two. So glass. And if I go to materials, somewhere around here, I'm going to see my glasses. It's presets. Sorry. There you go. So I find this fascinating because you can do this for everything, including scene nodes or anything like that. So you have everything at your fingertips. Okay, let's do something else. Let's go and check out the new nodes. I'm going to go to my node setup here. This is a list of most, not all, of the new nodes. And these have to do with arrays, swap and erase elements. You can find stuff. We have the shift array. We can move things around by certain elements, shuffle. This is interesting because you can get objects and then shuffle their indices, and that will make a garbled object. Really cool for motion graphics. And of course, you can see these in a more programmatic way. We have geometry nodes, some new geometry nodes here. The points info and the polygon info has been updated. So this is a new node now that offers all these, which is more than we used to get in the previous version. We have some ready-made node assets here: wave, stairs, square star, FUI, ring, and backdrop. Closest points, which is fantastic, and Chris is doing a really nice example. It's based on a KD tree setup. It's very fast, and it can find the closest point on a geometry from a specific query position, and you can loop through these. Again, go and watch Chris. He does an excellent job. I'm not going to attempt to do something like that in this very limited time. Dash spline modifier and trim spline modifier. Then we have these math ones, points and circle, point and torus, cycle indices, and distance to line to find closest points on line and stuff like that. And then we have these new text nodes where it allows you to strip the white space, generally to do text wrangling, as we call it. Random strings, so you can do really interesting motion graphics. And yeah, the split is an interesting one. And I'm going to show you an example of something I'm working on, wink, wink. If anyone does any medical visualization and has access to PDB files, most of you won't, but it's just a demonstration of where nodes can lead in terms of data management and data wrangling. And finally, we have this sample shader where you can read a three-dimensional UVW coordinate in space, a normalized position, which MoGraph creates, distributions create, and sample that color to use it. There's an interesting example in the help documentation. So other good things. Now, as you may have already observed, we have these colors. So each type of node has the big colored bar. I love bold colors. It's easier to decipher what's going on because the nodal, let's say, layouts tend to be a bit complex to read as compared to linear object manager style stacks. So not only we have colors on the nodes, but we have changed the icons and the colors for the input and output ports. If it's single numbers, if it's arrays, if it's geometry, and all that cool stuff. So you will find that it's easier to navigate a node graph, having a better understanding. Look at the nodes become their color, so you know that these are geometry nodes, that each one is sort of the blue ones are assets, and so forth. So it's easier to read these. Okay, I'm going through my list on this side. So the better auto conversions. If you take, let's say, a sphere, which is a geometry node like this, you have to convert it to an op stream in order to put it on your scene. But here you get an auto conversion now. So we already had that with iterations and arrays, but now more of these auto conversions will happen just to minimize the number of clicks and drags you have to do. And I find that very, very interesting. And now let me leave this. Let me undo and just leave this here. Oops, let me redo now. So another thing I like is that now you can select a number of nodes. Now, we all know that if I take this and press Control and drag it, I just drag and make a copy. But if you press Control and Shift, you retain the inputs. And that is amazing for stuff that is reading data from many nodes. You know how much time this takes. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, especially with Redshift materials.
Yes, and what I'm showing you here applies to Redshift materials as well. It's just that it makes me seem smarter when I do it here. So that's the only reason I'm doing it. The other thing you can do is...
You seem super smart now.
Oh, thank you.
I'm sold, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Sold on your smartness.
pretend to be blushing. Now, there's an improvement in the way we group nodes. So if you right-click and you say group nodes, you usually just get a generic group. But there are ways to group them as. If you go up to the edit, you can actually group nodes as... Where was that? Group nodes as... I can't find it now. See? Oh, there you go. It's in the create. And you can group nodes as a specific type. So you don't have to first create that type, then select everything, copy and paste it inside, and so forth. So you can create groups directly. Again, it's a helper. It's a bit of a life improvement for anyone that deals with nodes. So let's go down my list. Oh, the other thing I like. So let me show you something I've been working on. Now, disclaimer, before I click on this little thing, disclaimer, this may never see the light of day. I'm going to release some version of it for people to learn from. But anyone that wants something like this, it's experimental. So this is a molecular viewer that uses predominantly PDB files and creates the molecules based on certain things. It's experimental, and at this point, it doesn't do much. But I'll show you how these improvements can make things look better. So in this particular example, it reads the file, it gets rid of some of the data, especially using switch, and in here, it creates some objects, some data structures, and so forth. It uses heavily that text split, so I can read the text file and extract what each line means and stuff like that. So this wouldn't be possible with 2023.1, and it's more possible now. And of course, I've created this little asset. You can change the colorization based on a number of parameters that already exists in this file, and so forth.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Do you always have to go to the attribute manager to change a setting?
That was the next point I was going to make. So one of the improvements is that we have these two little tabs now. This brings up an integrated asset manager, which is good because if you want to have this on a separate screen, then it's very handy to have everything very close. The other thing is this. So now the attributes, both for Redshift, this used to work this way. Then it was taken away from us, and you had to dock things and so forth. Now it's integrated. So anything you select, you get the attributes here. You can always go to the mode configuration and turn off attributes here if you wish to do that in a specific layout. So the attributes will not appear in two different positions. And this, again, allows you to optimize your working space when you're doing nodes. Thank you very much, Jonas. Sorry, Darren. Okay, I always confuse you two. You're equally as smart. So stop laughing.
Thank you.
So, oh yeah, what I wanted to show you was the new selections, upstream, downstream, or connected. So you select a node, and sometimes you find yourselves in a situation where maybe things are getting a bit, I've managed and I've tried to keep things as tidy as possible. But maybe you want to find out which nodes are connected to this. So now you can right-click and select connected nodes, and it will connect all the connected nodes. You can give them a jiggle so you can see which ones they are, or you can connect the upstream, the ones that are giving the data to this, or downstream, because this is up and data flows downwards. So downstream is to the right, and go downstream node. So this is another helper. Also, the breadcrumbs here. So I'm in this node. I go back to my scene. I do a few things, and then I can always jump back to that original one. So you have the ability to go back and forth quickly in complex groups. So again,
That's useful, yeah.
It's very useful, yeah, especially if you work with assets and groups and stuff like that. Now, another thing, let me see. Yes, the heat map. Bum, bum, bum. So sometimes we don't know which part of our node graph is consuming much of the processing power. So now we have the first implementation of the heat map, and boom, it will show us with scary red colors or black that doesn't do anything, where the majority of the process is being consumed. So this is the import data. There's nothing inside here. So apparently this is doing something, whether I like it or not. But the second slowest one is this one here. So you can go in here and you see, oh, it's this atom group. And from the atom group, it's, oh, compose vectors. And in here, you see that it's what is consuming most. Oh, it's this record group. And from here, it's the append elements. So you managed to get down to what is causing your delays, and maybe change the way it's done or optimize the way. But the heat map is extremely useful to troubleshoot if you find that your node graph is giving you a hard time, is going slow and all that. So
you know what I just noticed about that?
What did you notice about
I just noticed that when you turn it on, it changes the colors of all of the nodes in the overview mini map in the corner.
Yep. And it gives you the ones that consume more. And oh, I see something interesting here, though.
So when you're zoomed in,
look at this. This is not changing. Ha ha. I report another bug. Yeah. Okay. I find success in finding bugs, because finding a bug means they will fix a bug, and fixing a bug makes the software better for everyone. I do not take pleasure by the bug. I take pleasure by the potential of finding a bug. Did I say that? Okay, let me see what else do I have here. Heat maps. And the last one I'm going to mention here is that for any nodes that allow you to go and add various elements. So, for example, the typical example would be the children node or the scene root, where it has this add or remove, or you're building an array. Let's build an array, and you have these append, truncate. Of course, I need a data structure here, say matrix, and again, append, and so forth. Now you can do that appending away from here. You can go and you can add elements, or you can delete any of these elements. A bit of a word of caution. If you have a node graph which is like this, and you want to click on this, and by mistake you click on this, you're deleting the element. So just be wary to click mostly where the color is, or where that thing, and not on these dots. The only reason I'm telling you is that I removed certain things the other day, which I didn't want to remove. Just be aware of that. And yes, if there are any questions about this, I'll make sure not to answer, just to increase the suspense.
No real questions, but one guy on the ZBrush channel had said that you should be working for NASA. So kudos, man.
No,
you broke some brains.
That's a misconception. NASA works for me.
Oh, boom.
Which is factual, actually. NASA works for everyone, right? We
Yeah,
pay
exactly.
NASA, and NASA works for us.
Perfect.
I'm so
Okay,
hungry.
cool. I don't think that there are questions. So
Vanessa.
we can continue with Redshift. So
Sorry, I want to say to the comment, Vanessa. That's cool. That's cool.
Vanessa, yeah, I like that as well. All right, so I'm gonna give the screen to Ellie. There you go.
Cool.
I didn't ask you if you're ready, but I just assumed.
Hey, I've got to be now, haven't I?
Yeah. Are you ready?
Yeah, of course. I'm good
Great.
to go. Do we want to enlarge the screen again? Because you can have people at the bottom if you want, and I can
Yes,
try and
let's do it like that.
Yeah, that's cool. That shouldn't be a problem.
I like it.
Let me try what
Cool.
happens if I adjust this while we are.
I'll let you do that and I'll just crack on. All right, cool. So, hey everyone. Yeah, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the new Redshift features. And we're going to start with the new Flakes Shader. And it's really great for building a variety of different kind of materials. Here I'm using it to create a metallic car paint. So if I just kick off my render view, we can see it's just on this car paint bit here. So this model is by Henry Shavenka, an amazing ZBrush artist. So got to shout him out. I definitely did not model this because, as you know, I can't model anything. Cool. So let me open up my car paint. And what the Flakes shader does is it outputs displaced normals. So let's see if I can make this a little bit more obvious by maybe changing the color, just so we can see it a little bit better. Cool, right. So the way we can find that is if we double click, because I noticed that Abby said that they can't seem to find the new Flakes node in the commander. So in your node editor, you can just double click and you can search Flakes. Or we can take advantage of the new pop-out windows and then do the same thing. Just search for Flakes. So you should be able to find it now, hopefully. Let us know if not, and then we can try and figure that out. Cool. So in here, we have a few different properties that we can adjust to control the flakes. So we have the scale, which is the size of the flakes or the pattern that's going over the top of our surface. So if I increase this, it might make it a little bit more obvious for us to see. Cool. So yeah, now hopefully you guys can see that a lot easier in the render view. We can still see all these individual flakes over the surface of my particular model. And these are based on currently a Voronoi pattern. So we can also change this to dots. So we can have two different pattern options. We can have dots or we can have Voronoi. And you'll notice that when I change it to dots, I also get an option to control the flake size. So that actually becomes enabled when I change that to dots. So the scale is the size of our pattern, Voronoi or dots. We then have the density. So at the moment, my density is set to 1. So what it's going to do, because it's set to Voronoi as a pattern, it's going to completely spread over the surface and cover the surface of my object. And then we can just reduce the density. So it's a value of 0 to 1. And then we can see we get less dense flakes going across the surface. Let me just put that back up. Randomize. So randomize actually works as the strength. It's a strength slider. Again, 0 to 1. And it's going to be how much or how strong the flakes are going to be tilted from the surface normal. So if I change this to 0, we'll notice that we don't get anything. And if I set this to 1, we can see we get a much stronger and more obvious level of displacement on our normals. So this gets, if we just talk a little bit about the outputs that we have. So the main output is the output normal, which is the one I've got here, and it connects straight into our bump map. So we don't actually need the bump map node. It can just go straight in. And what's nice is we have the two little purple icons if you're working in the C4D node editor. So it's nice. We can see exactly what needs to plug into what. We also have we can output the alpha for the flakes. And then we can output the blend between, which is great for when we're doing 3D flakes. I've got another scene to show that in just a sec. And then the final thing is output flakes ID. And what this is it gives a grayscale version for each of our flakes. And so, for example, when I was working on the white sort of paint here and my scale was really low, it's kind of hard to see exactly the changes that I'm making. And so what we can do is we can connect this, if I just get rid of that, to my base color. And then now I can see the grayscale sort of variation that I'm doing. And then now I can start to tweak this and see exactly how they're going to look before I actually plug it into my bump map. Cool. So that is the flake shader. And we could even, like another example could be to take that output ID, so the flakes ID, and connect it into the reflection roughness to create some more variation to go in line with the output normal. And then just a really quick thing. So I've not messed too much with the 3D flakes, but what we can do is this example here, we're using a transparent object. So it's a real simple scene, just a sphere and a dome light. And I've got a transparent object. So I've got like a glass object. And then I'm using the flakes, again, connected the output normal to the bump map. And then I'm using dots and a flake size of like 0.1, so a small flake size. And I've got a depth in here. And now we can see that we can create like particles inside of a transparent object. So that's another benefit that comes with using the flake shader.
That's a really cool one because it creates all the parallax and so on. I like it.
It is. Cool. So yeah, we're going to fly through these because I don't want to take up like everyone's time because we've still got loads of cool stuff to show. But let me find the scene that I need. Is this the one? Oh, I love that that's happened. Okay, cool. Let's just... Guys, fill for a little bit while I close Cinema 4D.
So
Yeah.
watching you
So
do the flake stuff and seeing some of the content that has already been posted online by Aaron and a few others that have gotten their hands on it. I'm just so excited to get into it, especially that depth with the flakes, because I've been so focused on the less of the Redshift and more of the Cinema 4D new features that I haven't played with it as much. And I just think it's really exciting. Yeah, just to add that feel to some materials and not having to search for like, a texture. That's exactly what I want. You can just dial it in with the shader, which is awesome.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I couldn't agree more. Good fill, Darren. Okay, cool. So
Darren Filovitz.
Back to some stuff. And that is the new backplate options inside of the Redshift camera in Cinema 4D. And so if I just grab my Redshift camera here, so I've already got it sort of like pre-placed, so I didn't have to worry about perfectly matching it whilst you're all watching. We now have, you'll see, we have a little background tab added in here, and then we have some background options. And so this is replacing the legacy method where you would add a background image to the dome light. This now replaces that. So what we can do, we can change this to override. And then it opens up this image option. And I just very quickly went on Unsplash, found this image here from a guy called Uncle Lim. Cheers, Uncle Lim. And I'm just going to throw that in.
There's no way that's going to match up or look good. But
then what we can do, we can do some stuff to it. We can do some stuff. So I was playing around with this earlier. So we can change the framing, stretch, crop, fit. And as we can see, crop here works quite nicely. We also have the offset options. So we can offset the image X and Y. And then we have some extra color options as well. But again, we can do all this inside of the render view or in post if we want to. Okay, so it's kind of matching, but one thing that really sells things like this is to add a shadow underneath. And so I wanted to really quickly show you how you would do that. It's not necessarily the backplate feature, but I wanted to show it anyway. So what we can do is we can throw in a plane, and I'm just going to scale that up, and then maybe we pull that in. Cool. So we can now see that we are creating this shadow on this plane, but we can still see the plane. So how can we comp all this stuff together? Well, we can right click on our plane, go to RS object and throw that tag on there. Then inside of the matte options, inside the matte tab, we can go to override, and then we can go to enabled. And now we're seeing our background. Cool. Step one. We've now got a background and we're not seeing the plane. But just below that, if we then enable our shadows, we're now creating that shadow underneath, and it helps to sell this a lot more. And it also saves us having to try and do it in post.
Did you really not? Is that really the first image that you just randomly picked? Because that's perfect. That's perfect. I'd swear, you know.
I was looking for like one that would match though. I didn't just sort of pluck it out of thin air. I was like, okay, that one looks like it could go quite well. And it was also like an hour ago. So I was like, oh, let's get a bit close to the live stream.
You nailed it.
That's how we prepare.
Do you mind an interjection here?
Absolutely.
So one of the limitations of the previous way using the background on a dome light was anything you put there, if you had depth of field, for example, the depth of field would be calculated for the background. And you couldn't get a final frame and use depth of field on the rest of the image. These problems have been solved with the new backplate, because you can choose if you want the rays to change the background, if it goes through glass and refracts and all that. So there are a couple of features there and settings which allow you to fine tune it so you can do your composites much more effectively.
Lovely interjection, as always.
Thank you.
Finally, one quick thing is we can also have this apply to our secondary rays, so our secondary GI rays. And what it's going to do, it's going to add some extra shadow inside these slightly darker areas. Again, all this stuff is just to help sell it and make it look less like a 3D render and more like it's actually something inside of the photograph originally. And then finally, some extra little things that I did was, as kind of Noseman was saying, we can add bokeh to this. We can apply it now and have it on the back plate, or we can not have it on the back plate, as he was saying. So we can come into optical and we can just enable our bokeh. And then we can do things like add a LUT over the top. And another thing to really help sell this is to add a little bit of bloom. That's maybe a little bit too much, but we can up that. And then it all kind of comes together and it makes it look a little bit more like it could be a photograph. Again, the best stuff you're going to do would be render this out and then do some stuff in post, like add a bit of grain, add a bit of chromatic aberration is going to help sell this a lot more. Cool. Right. The final thing, and then I can hand it over to the rest of the gang, is the new sky models. Let me just kick this off. This is a super basic scene, just like a sunset landscape. And at the moment, it's not looking like much. So what we can do is we can throw in the sun and sky rig. And so what we have now is we have a new sky shader model inside of here. And so if I drop that down, inside of the general for the sky tab, we have a new model called PRG Sky. And what this does is I won't give you the scientific stuff and based on the paper that it's all written about, but what it does is now it calculates much more accurately the sun radiance, and especially when it comes to when the sun is near to the horizon. So for example, sunrise and sunset scenarios, it's going to better and more accurately calculate those. And we can show that off by just sort of going to the sun and adjusting my coordinates. So maybe something like 140. And then it's when we go really, really low with this. So let's go -2. We can see we get this really nice kind of
That's beautiful.
sunset look. And as a comparison, as a quick comparison, if we go back to the original default model, which was Jose Wilkie, we can see we get a massive, massive difference. So let's go back to that. Some extra things is we also now have a sun tint setting. So inside of here, we can do something like create a pink sun tint, and it's going to create it and cast it along the atmosphere and on the sunset and in the sky as well. We can do the normal things that we could do before with our sun disk scale, our scale, and our intensity. So we can create that nice glow around the edge. And it also reacts to turbidity. So the more turbidity we have, the less of like the sun and the sky. It creates that like haziness over the top. So if I up that to something like maybe 9, we can see we're getting that turbidity now reacting inside of here. Ozone doesn't make a difference, doesn't react at all. But what it also reacts to is the ground color. And so if I create a lighter color, you'll notice in the atmosphere area of my sky, so the bit on the left-hand side, it is now brighter. And that's because as the sun and the light hits the ground, it sees it as bright, and so it's going to bounce off. And the same as the opposite. If I change my ground color to black, we then get less kind of brightness and less light bouncing off.
Ellie, I have a couple UFO type models I'm going to send you. So then some of the people in the chat are like, alien world, let's go. So here we go.
Yep, absolutely. We can throw those in there. Cool, yeah. So I don't know if there were any questions, but yeah, those are sort of the main 4 features that have come in: the Flakes Shader, the backplate, the PRG clear sky, and then also the pop-out windows that we saw as we're now creating our Redshift materials, which is just like my personal favorite feature because it makes life so much easier. And for any Houdini users, the Redshift camera, so what we sort of looked at in here, is now available in there.
That's great. Cool.
Time.
All right. So who's next? Max is next. So let me just go to this one and let's highlight Max. So here we go.
Thank you so much. It's because of my egotistical sense. I need to be soloed. I'm sorry, guys. So, so for example, if you render out your scene and you decided to do everything instead in post, then I have a good news for you because in this new release we have new accurate strength slider available inside every single tools in Magic Bullet Looks. So for example, if we open Magic Bullet Looks, all these tools that you have inside Magic Bullet Looks now have strength slider. So for example, lens distortions, right? Previously, lens distortion doesn't have any strength slider. So if I decided to like change the amount of the distortions, and then instead of playing it here, instead of playing with the strength slider here, and I want to do it later on in the master slider, I can still do that in the old build, right? So with a new strength slider, if I'm reducing the strength, you can really see that all these spatial effects will behave correctly. So if I just park it around 50% of the strength, and if I compare it to the old behavior, you can really see the one on the right is the one from the previous build. You can really see that there are some artifacts when we are applying strength on the, how do you call it, spatial effect, right?
This makes me so happy.
Thank you, Hashi. Right. Furthermore, so if we go back to looks, and furthermore, you can pair all these tools. Now, finally, if you have like a presets that you really love, and it's like combinations of a lot of different tools, like what I have here. I have my film emulations at the end, and then I have like lens emulations at the on the front. And I'm not using all those tools like full power, like full blast. No, everything is like carefully tailored for to the taste, so to say. I have like my optical diffusions only around 30%, my swing tilt around there, and I also have lens vignette, chromatic aberrations, and also I have my noise, and also the film emulation at the end. So I can like play around with all this individual strength slider, or now I can calculate. I can reduce the combinations of those effects, like at the same time, and getting then like an accurate result. So that is the new features on Magic Bullet Looks.
So that's pretty much like, yeah, mapped to the strength sliders of each of the other effects.
Exactly.
That's
so
cool.
every single effect is calculated individually, so you get like a very nice behavior, correct
Perfect.
behavior in this case.
Before it was just blending between the two, right? Like blending in terms of like opacity blending.
Mhm.
Oh, that's so much better now. Very cool.
Yeah. So that's the short and sweet update from Magic Bullet Looks.
Very cool. So next up would be Hashi.
Hey, I should be good to go.
Yes, give me a second. There you are.
All right. So we're going to, well, first of all, I'm going to show off one of the new cool features specifically in VFX Supercomp. If you've ever watched anything that I've ever done, I really love using Supercomp as a crutch to get through my VFX life. And I want to show you what an amazing crutch it can be, because I've got some very garbage layers. I've got this very realistic looking sunset photo. I've got this circle created with the mask tool here. Decided to put right there. And then I'd have this downloaded stock dragon from Production Crate, which is wonderful. And, you know, he reminds me of Draco from Dragonheart. But this, so I just want to point out that this is my start point. So here's where we are beginning this little journey together. Now, you've probably seen what Supercomp can do, but if you haven't, this is what it can do. If you can quickly put together 3 elements like this, Supercomp is this really cool compositing environment within After Effects that makes everything look better. Oh, you know what? I did forget that there's one more hidden layer I have here, which is one of my favorite effects in After Effects, fractal noise. I've got some fractal noise, just kind of doing this thing. And this layer is actually going to be pretty important to what we're about to do. So this is just the dynamic twist settings on fractal noise, a few keyframes on position and evolution. But I'm going to take all of these things and put them into the Supercomp blender like this. I select all of my layers and then go to Effect, RGVFX, Supercomp. And then this will automatically, because I've done this before, open up this nice new window for Supercomp right here. And it's brought all of my layers over into here. So we'll run through the standard things that you could do in Supercomp before. You can see all of my 4 layers stacked up right here, starting with this sunset, which, you know, that's fine. We'll add this circle here. And to make this more of a sun in here, we're going to click on this little plus, and we're going to add some optical glow. Optical glow is this beautiful glow that if I turn the amount down and maybe the size up, I can get this really nice bloom around this, which is pretty cool. And in fact, I could turn the size up pretty large if I wanted to. You can see that's basically affecting the whole screen. And then I can turn it back down to 0. And let's leave it right around here somewhere. But Optical glow also has the ability to colorize this. So I'm just going to kind of orange up my glow a little bit. And now you can see that that glow coming off of it is a little bit, more orangey, which I really like. So now we have this sun that looks a lot better already just by adding this optical glow effect. Here's before, here's after. And now let's throw in our dragon. So here's the dragon, and you'll see that without doing anything to the dragon at all, the sun is creating this cool light wrap around him. And that's because when you're in Supercomp, this optical glow on this layer below is aware that there's stuff in front of it here, and it reduces the glow where it's being blocked, which is insane. Like that's something that you used to have to set up crazy pre-comps to do. But this is all old news because we used to be able to do this anyway in Supercomp. This is what it always did. So what I'm introducing to you today, let's throw a quick bit of, color correction on the dragon. The greatest thing is that you can just dive into this and do anything you want. You can click this handy match background button, which can be very helpful. You'll notice that there's a black point and a white point slider right here. And it tells you how much influence from this background, specifically where the alpha of this layer is, it'll take the color. So if I clicked it right now, it's assuming that this is sort of in an average distance, which is pretty cool. These are the right colors, but it's a little bit too much. So instead, I really wanted to adjust the white point a bunch, but maybe I'll turn down how much the black point is influenced and click on match background again. And now you'll see that it just tinted it a little bit more into this color range. And this is super helpful for someone who is colorblind like I am. I can adjust the white and gray points just to get a little bit more of a look that I like out of the overall composition. And I'm going to look at this optical glow settings where I can maybe adjust the size down a little bit more. There we go. Actually, I don't know. We'll go big, right? And now let's look at the newest cool feature that was just released yesterday for Supercomp. I showed you that fractal noise layer, and it looks like this. And normally, if you brought in something like this, you'd have the option to, I guess, add it on top or something like that. But it has no transparency or anything. It's just this layer. But now, instead of just normal and additive, we have added adjustment layer. Now, I've added it now, and you'll see that it basically disappears. It's become an adjustment layer. This means that based on the alpha of this layer, you could add an effect like some color correction. And since there's alpha everywhere, I could go through and do something like adjust where my, basically it's acting like this color correction is on an adjustment layer above everything in here, which is pretty cool. I'm going to reset that, and I'll just fine tune it a little bit because I want to maybe brighten that a bit. I want to drop my mids a bit just for a little bit more contrasty look. So this is looking a lot better already, but now we also have the ability to add heat blur separately based on this new layer. And look at the transformation just between applying that or not. Suddenly, if I play this through, I now have that fractal noise pattern affecting both blur and, if I'd like to, displacement. So I'm going to turn up the displacement amount. I'll exaggerate it for a second so you can sort of see what it's doing. It's taking my fractal noise pattern and doing this cool glassy thing. And if you wanted to, you could absolutely soften this out, add some really cool looking displacement or whatever. But what I really want is something more like the effect heat wave creates, which is now basically built into this. So I will turn the blur down a little bit so it's a little bit more in focus. And then I'm going to turn up the displacement slightly. Now this is a little bit too much detail in the displacement, so I'm going to soften it a little bit. And maybe I'll turn the spread up. You can additionally, if you're doing something glassy, spread the chromatic separation, which may be hard to see in something so monochrome as this. But let's see, let me turn the soften down a little bit and the displacement down to a pretty low number. So I'm just getting a bit of heat displacement like that. And now I can play through this. and we have these much cooler looking imagery. And in fact, I could even add some optical glow to this very bottom layer just to show you how these downward up things work. And I'll set it to kind of only glow a little teeny bit, but a lot. And so I can wrap a little bit extra light onto this dragon. And if there wasn't enough light wrap on the dragon, I can go right to the dragon and say, add some light wrap that is aware of whatever I just did to the background. So I could turn it up to a very dramatic amount, like, 2001 compositing level, or I could leave it probably at the default setting, which is about 10. But these, the adjustment layer type in Supercomp is something that I've been missing because it would be really helpful for doing effects like this all within a Supercomp setting, or doing things like using the color correction to add a drop shadow back in that you can control separately, color mix with your composite, and keep everything within one Supercomp layer. So that's what I have to show today.
That's fantastic. That's so great. I love Supercomp anyways, but having adjustment layers in Supercomp it just adds another layer. Haha. It does.
Well, it does.
Very cool. Very cool. So I don't see any questions in the chat about Supercomp so far. So
I dare you.
I would say we just continue with Chad. Chad is going to show you some updates from Universe, Trapcode, and Forger. So are you ready to share the screen?
I'm ready.
Let's
You're ready,
do it up,
so-
Chad GTP. GPT.
That's fantastic. I haven't heard that yet. That's great. One thing I was going to say really quick about Supercomp, the adjustment layers, that's kind of fun, is that they talk about in the documentation that there's now region-based color correction. And I was like, what? I don't get it. And I just realized that you could, like Hashi mentioned, you can take the alpha, the layer, and that's what it's looking at. So if you did have some kind of if you wanted to, affect the color grade of some spot in Supercomp, you could just make a shape layer or whatever that's has an alpha.
I do have an example. If you want to switch back to my screen really quickly, I could just show you what that looks like.
Sweet.
There you go.
Opening project, and okay. So here's a very silly example because I actually had in this example, I actually had a negative matte right here. That was the background. And then when I throw that adjustment layer into Supercomp, I can just I can desat the background or do something like that. This cornfield example is one too, where I have just a layer with a mask like that. So you can quickly do your own custom kind of vignette, throw that into Supercomp. And when Supercomp is rendering, you can tell that adjustment layer. Let me open it up here. Oh, I'm open. I might have been making all of these demos in Supercomp beta because we are, that's how we roll. I do have the new Supercomp here, but I didn't rebuild this in it yet. But here you go. You can see that this black solid is being used as an adjustment layer, and it has some color correction on it. And it's just like that. You can color a vignette or anything even more specific as this if you want. That's all.
Very cool.
Cool, man. Thanks, Hashi. Was
Alright,
that a subtle reference to Last of Us, by the way? The outstanding in our field?
That is us. That's the Maxon training team for you.
Okay. That's fantastic.
Like a scarecrow.
Like a scarecrow winning an award. Outstanding in their field. Okay, so I'll go through this really quickly, and if there's questions, you can slow me down. But basically, one of the things that for Trapcode that we've introduced is a new collection of sprites. That era of the 50s and 60s is one of the most charming eras, and it's also one of the eras with the most distinct stars, and so it feels kind of an omission that we have not had yet. The ability to create these kind of stars inside of particular. Let me just go ahead and apply particular really quick. You think I would have remember with all of the setup that I did for this session. You think that I would have remembered to have just like particular going, and I forgot. But what we could do here is we go to the particle section, load up sprites, and then go to the sprite library. And then inside the sprite library now, there's 68 new sprites. I believe it's like 48 static and like 20 animated or something like that. All kinds of like old school like stars, and so if you're a fan of like Rocky and Bullwinkle or like OG Disneyland from back in the day or whatever, there's just little molecules and starbursts and all kinds of fun stuff, which I think really comes in handy when you're doing trap code stuff. Like this style is kind of like timeless, and it's really fun. So I created some kind of like example projects. This is all just like one layer of particular with different form behavior and particular behavior with these going on here. And then here's this example. Some of the stuff is like on the website. And just kind of get a sense of like what that is like. Yeah, these are all just done on like one layer of particular, which is really fun. And this is not because it has text, but just this kind of like little flashes, old school fun stuff. I don't know. I find myself always wanting. Man. Thanks. Yeah.
It is beautiful.
Yeah, I think we need to get some I Dream a Genie up in here. Yeah. Like some old shapes. Also, you got to recreate like some 1990s like book cover backgrounds for me too.
Oh, definitely.
That's fun. So that's the sprites. Oh, there was one example of this that's kind of fun. This didn't make it into this version necessarily, but one of the things I was playing around with that you can set up on your own. Like I didn't create it. I wanted to create a preset that didn't make it in this version, but one of the sprites is like a bubble sprite. It's just like a few frames long of just like different bubble shapes, and then another one of like a bubble pop animation like this. And then if you set this up in particular with the emit from parent option with also the emit from parent def, then you can create these little bubbles. So the bubbles emit on the first parent system, and then they have a lifespan, they die out. And then the second system is set up so that when the bubble dies, then the little pop animation plays. And then it creates these kind of like fun little, like animation of little carbonated drinks, like when Sprite first came out, probably.
That's very cool.
So cool.
Little cute little things. Thanks.
I love it.
Thanks, guys. So yeah, there might be more of those things coming out down the road. It's kind of fun.
We did have a question real quick,
okay.
Just to interrupt. Could this, they're asking if this could be done with the wiggle effects, or is this something that's like new and specific to this feature?
So let's see. Yes, Fury, I see your question. That is all available in Form 2. I don't see the wiggle question.
No, that came through on my side, so that's why I'm asking.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Sorry,
there isn't any kind of like wiggly behavior that was added, just the sprites. So there is some wiggle to the bubbles built into the sprite, which is there. So this carbon pop animation preset is not there currently, but the bubbles are there and the popping animations are there. So you could create effects like this with some of those raw materials. So thanks for the question.
I want that in cinema.
It's so cool. Just the very shortest name droppy comment. Probably 15 years ago, I was working on previs for the Peabody and Sherman movie. And I was using trap code particular, whatever version that was then, to try to simulate the look of all of their 2D effects. And you've just did way better than I did in a stunning amount of time. These are phenomenal.
Thanks, man. Yeah, the idea came about, I mention this all the time, so apologies if you've heard the story before, but I worked on the Jinx and Della holiday special, like drag queens. It's great, it's on Hulu. And there was a lot of this kind of like mid-century art. Ben de la Creme, the drag queen that directed it, did a really, really, really great job, and gathered all this reference, and it was just so helpful. And I just really was like, this has got to be in particular, and they finally let us do that, which is like really exciting. So yeah, it's a fun time. So moving on, we also sped up light emitters. So if you want to emit particles from lights, that's typically slowed things down a lot, and apparently they sped that up a great deal. So now you can emit particles from lights. It's like 3 times faster. Moving on to universe, there's a new effect that's really exciting called Symbol Mapper. And what this does is, like I have some stuff here, and just using some universe presets, this is not exciting. But then this new Symbol Mapper preset, what it does is it looks at the luminance of the layer that it's applied to, and then creates characters and maps them to those areas of luminance. So you could very quickly create some really interesting effects like this, where I've applied it to what is essentially hot dumpster fire garbage, and then you add Symbol Mapper, and then it kind of creates this really interesting effect, which is pretty cool.
I'm sorry, is that a preset in After Effects? Hot dumpster fire?
No, hot dumpster fire garbage is not a preset. That's just like kind of like my own art that I make 90% of the time. And you could apply
I love it.
You
That
can
was
call it that.
That was awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Oh, go ahead.
Oh man, I was just gonna throw in this, just like the Matrix has you, is what I'm thinking every time I see this feature pop up.
Yeah, it's a really cool effect, and I'm currently working on. Maybe I should announce this on a show that's live. I'm currently working on a training video for Cineversity for Symbol Mapper. I think that's probably okay to share. And this is an example that I created for that, because if I take away electrify, you can see that what looks like before and after. Then you can see like what the difference that it makes to the Symbol Mapper. So here's like this T. If I take off electrify, there's like YPP right here. You can see these letters. When I take off electrify, you can see that just like disappears, because it understands kind of like what's going on. And as I add more luminance with this electrify effect, it changes the result of the Symbol Mapper, which is pretty cool. There are pre-processed effects. We could add brightness and contrast coming in. We could also do a fit to frame. So we could change the size of this if we want to. Oh, wait, no. By default, it's fit to frame, but we could change the size of this so it is like a small patch or something like that. We could also change the size of the symbols, obviously, and then the spacing of how far apart they are. What's pretty cool, though, and it's not maybe obvious, is that we could actually do a negative spacing. So we can actually have the characters kind of like overlap each other and create some like really weird effects in that way by doing negative spacing, and have them kind of like bunch up and even just kind of be on top of each other, which is interesting. So yeah, you could get some really interesting effects that way, which is pretty cool. And another little hack that I'll go through this really quickly. We could have the characters evolve over time. A little hack is that if you take the random seed to 0 and you enable all characters, that it enables a secret feature in Symbol Mapper, which looks not only at the luminance of the layer it's applied to, but it also looks at the spacing of the characters and maps the characters more accurately to the actual luminance itself. So if you have like, a luminant area, might use like an O instead of just like some other like random letter or whatever. So it's actually like more intelligently looking at the content and using a letter that matches the space in a more intelligent way instead of like, kind of like a random way. So again, take the random seed to 0 and then enable all characters there. There's also some coloring options I won't get into, and also some effects like glow and adding scan lines built into the effect. I'm going to open up the dashboard to show you this really quick. There's Symbol Mapper. And then if I go to the presets, these presets that say density, the density presets, those are the ones that use that hack where you take the randomcy to 0 and it's using the characters in a more intelligent way, yada, yada. Let's see. Okay, I'm trying to like rush through this here. Oh yeah, a couple of new things that are really fun. Speaking of universe, is that there's a search thing here. So if I do a search for like, oh, I know I want something electrify, I could just do a search and then it comes up with that result. Especially now that, you know, universe is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. If I did a search for SYM, I don't have to remember what category it's in. It's almost like the Effects and Presets panel. I don't have to remember what category the stuff is in or where to find it. I can just do a search and find it. It's also really intelligent too, because if I go to electrify and I just do something like, is there something that has like light in it? Yeah, so I could do a search, and when I'm actually in the effect in the dashboard, then the search results only return the presets, whereas when I'm in all the effects, the results only return the effects themselves. So it's an intelligent way to check stuff out and search for like what you need quicker. And speaking of presets, we have a new feature, but it's almost like, to me, opening a new door to a lot of really incredible stuff in the future. And that is like cloud-based capsules. So these like text presets, sometimes you'll see like this little like cloud icon. And so that just means that it's just in the cloud and you could download it if you want to, but it's not like on your system, just like the preview is here. And in this way, we can kind of add more capsules, more universe presets more often without needing a big release around it. And also it doesn't take up weight on your system. So you could just like, so this is one of the cloud presets that I've already downloaded. So it doesn't have that little cloud icon. So just like the Offset browser, I could download these from the cloud if I want to. And also real quickly, there are new presets for the electrify effect, and long shadow has new ones. You can see that little cloud icon. These are new presets that they added. And also line, prism displacement, and RGB separation all have new presets added yesterday.
For just a second, I thought you called for your line from the stage director.
No, I don't know what that is, but I did not do that. But now I wish that I knew.
Line.
Oh yeah, it's just line. Yeah, like, somebody from the trading team cue me on what I'm supposed to say next. Line. That's great. Yeah, and these line presets are actually really cool. Line's one of my favorite effects. If we had more time, I would go into it and talk about my love of line, but I don't have time, so I'm just going to skip that. Okay, so I'm going to do a weird thing now. I'll talk. Are there any questions about symbol mapper or trapcode stuff before moving on to this next thing?
No questions on my side, but we did get an awesome comment. This says, exceptional team, had to say it. Thank yous across the board.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thanks. So this is the first time I've ever like broadcast iPad on a show. Can you see my screen, my iPad screen?
Yes.
You seeing this? Okay, cool. So this is Forger, which is an iPad app. It's only available for the iPad. I am madly in love with Forger. I find myself using it all the time when I don't have to. I take it on planes with me, and I find myself constantly using it because it has Cinema 4D's modeling engine, so you can do polygonal modeling. It's also like a baby sculpting tool. Well, compared to ZBrush, it's a baby sculpting tool. It's actually a really powerful sculpting tool, but it's really easy to get in and just understand like what's going on. And so we've added some really incredible features to Forger, which are just huge. So if I go to this little icon right here, it's basically like my layers panel, but it's like where my objects are. And I click the little plus icon if I want to add some stuff. And now we have directional lights, point lights, and spotlights, where lighting really wasn't an issue before. There's kind of like a default ambient light that really didn't do much before. But now we have lights that actually do things. So I can actually have this directional light here, and you can see the difference that makes. I can, relight my models and actually make them look kind of sexy, which is pretty fun. And then also, have that light on while I'm modeling or sculpting, which is pretty cool. One other example here. Well, not one other. I got two examples, but this model takes a second to load because it's really sick. It's by Alex Huget, who did our Getting Started with Forger series on Cineversity. And it's an amazing place to learn sculpting. You see the difference that lighting makes here. But one of the new features that's pretty exciting, if I go up to my display stuff here, this is the basic little tab thing, is like where basic display options have been. You know, if I wanted to add like, see the grid, or if I want to see like the wireframe on my model, this is where I could go for that. But now that we've added these like viewport effects, so what I could do is enable my effects, change my quality low, medium, high. There's ambient occlusion. You could see that, which you could see that difference that that's making, hopefully. And then also there's a depth of field. So I could come down here and I could use my little eyedropper tool to like click on that and then click on some place. Like I picked on the middle of the dragon because that's what I can see right now. But you could see that like we have now a shallow depth of field, and it's like working in real time. So I can like keep sculpting and doing whatever I want to do with this like depth of field effect in my viewport. I could also create like a light bloom, chromatic aberration, grain, vignetting even, which adds just like a little sexiness. And again, like while I'm working, I can, you know, model and sculpt in real time while all of these effects are happening. I don't have to like actually render this. So with lights and all these viewport effects, like you can just make sculpts and models and renders in Forger look like actually quality, which is like really exciting. Another thing I didn't mention, which doesn't show up in this example, but if I go to my object area here, click on this little like arrow thingy, which is like the options for the thing. We could also cast shadows. I'm pointing at my iPad, like you can see it. You can't see it either in the camera or on the iPad, but right here where I'm looking, there's a cast shadows thing, and I could cast shadows onto an object. And again, it's all real time, and I could keep working that way, which is pretty exciting. The last thing I want to show you is that Forger was getting jealous of like every app in our library apparently getting ZRemesher. So we've taken ZRemesher from ZBrush and added that here. And it works as a tool. So if I go down to ZRemesh down towards the bottom, I said that weird, remesh, then we could remesh it. So like we have this topology on the eye of our character here where it's very like grid-like. It's like straight up right into the eye. And I'm not good at modeling, but from what I hear from people who are smarter than me, that like that's not good. Like when we remesh, and if I were to remesh it with the standard Forger way here, which is the remesh down here at the bottom, we're just going to get more of the same. It's just going to be this like non-intelligent grid-like remeshing. And so with the ZRemesher, I can actually go in and use a guide and like draw on, and I have symmetry turned on. So you're seeing like, you know, the guide. So I could basically like draw these guides of how I want the topology flow to go. And then I can go to the remesh tool and change things like the target face count when I'm done remeshing. I could also use like, I could paint different values of density on different parts of the mesh or whatever. I have a lot of control over how I want this to remesh. And then I can, once I'm all set with that, I can hit the remesh button. I'm just going to skip the save. And you could see now that that topology now is a more intelligent topology. It's following the guides that I set like around the eyes and such. So anyways, that's new features in Forger. Got the lights with the shadow casting, viewport effects, and now ZRemesher. So
hey,
there's
Chad,
That's awesome.
quick question.
Do it.
About Forger itself specifically, especially with that dragon model that was up there.
Okay.
They're more curious on like how heavy that file is and like, you know, what's you know, can it handle a good amount of polygons?
You know, I wish I could comment on that intelligently, but I'm a new baby at sculpting. I'm really not great at it. So a lot of those issues about like density of the mesh and like that kind of stuff, like it's new to me. So I really apologize. I can't like answer. I mean, this is a very dense mesh. If I go to my basic effects and I turn on my wireframe, it just goes pitch black. It's a pretty, it's a pretty dense mesh, and it's like, you know, it takes a minute to load, but it's, you know, it's fine. Yeah. It's here. I could still work on it and whatnot. I guess that doesn't really, that's a non-answer, I suppose. But
no, that's okay. No, that's perfect because I have the same type of experience with Forger as well. So what I would just say is, you know, it can handle a good amount. Just go ahead and give it a shot, you know, just with anything, especially with the new ZRemesher that we've added for Forger. You know, if your scene is starting to lag because you're just using, you know, you're trying to rebuild via like what Dynamesh would be, just go ahead and ZRemesh that and drop that down, especially if you have an older iPad. But yeah, I've pushed it pretty far. I don't remember the exact number, but it seems pretty seamless. So really happy with it.
Yeah, it's been great for me so far. Another thing I would mention, and like this is probably, you know, I'm speaking out of my depth here, but what I understand as far as like remeshing goes, that you typically, like the workflow typically is that you want to use the standard Forger remesh as you're sculpting it, and then you want to use ZRemesher as almost like a final thing, as like kind of like, now I'm ready to send it to Cinema 4D or whatever, and now I want to remesh it and get it ready to like animate or whatever, and that's when you'd want to do the ZRemesher. Another thing I'll mention just very, very quickly is like my favorite feature in this in Forger is the ability to send and receive files from Cinema 4D directly without like plugging it in with a cable or setting up anything. I don't have to do a Dropbox, anything. I just say send to Cinema 4D, and it will, like, if Cinema 4D is open, it will just like take the model into Cinema 4D. It's an absolutely incredible feature. So, and it comes from Cinema 4D too. So you could like model something in Cinema, hit the button, send it directly to Forger on your iPad, sculpt it, send it right back. It's just a really, really incredible workflow that I don't think gets enough love and attention. So
wait a minute, you can use Cinema 4D on your iPad?
No, it's but you could send it from your desktop to Forger.
Okay.
So like if you're in Cinema and you want to sculpt on something, you could hit a button in Cinema, it will send it to Forger on your iPad, and you just open it right up in your iPad, and you could just like start sculpting. You hit this button, it sends it right back. It's just like it couldn't be more convenient. There's just nothing about that workflow that's not completely optimized and incredible. And yeah, I don't know how it does it with Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or some kind of dark arts science or something, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, yeah, that's my deals. Thank you for your questions and comments and such.
Well, we had actually one more question, and I'm just going to go ahead and answer just to segue it. But you know, utilizing the new Go Z capability between Cinema and ZBrush, while from Forger you can't go straight into ZBrush, you can just send it to Cinema 4D, like Chad said, and then go ahead and just Go Z that into ZBrush if you want to take it over to that application. And so so basically think of Cinema 4D as kind of like the central hub between Forger and ZBrush. Just plop it in there real fast, and then within seconds you're going to be in ZBrush.
That's cool. Oh yeah, so we hand over to Ian now. Sorry, I didn't.
Speaking of ZBrush.
Speaking of ZBrush, so Ian, you have the screen.
I have the screen. You guys can see this beautiful raptor that
we can see this beautiful raptor.
Told Hashi I'd get to him like 3 months ago, and here we are. So we're going to be talking about some new ZBrush features to wrap up this show. And also, too, I do want to point out that there was a question like 4 presenters ago that was talking about like ZRemesher tricks within ZBrush. So at the end, I will sneak in a little quick how-to settings for ZRemesher, which I find to be the absolute best. So let's get into it. First big feature that is brand new is now called Proxy Pose. And what you can see here is I have a model that is super dense on the body, but also too, I'm just going to explode it real fast. You can see that I have multiple subtools. And what Proxy Pose is going to do for me is when I have a dense model like this, I'm just going to solo this for a second. What I can do now is actually reduce the amount of polygons that I can operate to make massive changes without ever having to drop down my size ZRemesh or, you know, duplicate something, try to drop it down, create subdivisions, and then project back. Here, instead, what I can do, I'm going to turn on the wireframe just so you can see this so everybody can believe me. But with Proxy Pose, I can either come on here and just turn on Proxy Pose, which will default to whatever slider number is here. But because this model has some details, I want to go ahead and just push keep details a little bit. This will help kind of preserve some sharp edges. And then I'm going to go ahead and start dragging out this reduction slider. And you could see here that essentially it's basically tessellating it on the fly for me. And the reason why I want to do this is because I can actually now, with this super dense model, I'm going to go ahead and Control Z just for a second and point at the top, but this is a 2.6 million poly, I almost said $1 million, I don't know, 2.6 million poly mesh. And again, there's no subdivisions, but I can quickly reduce this. And what I will also like to point out is right up here at the very top left is a number, 1.3. That's the percentage that you're now working with of the total mesh. So I went from 2.6 mil to 17,000 active points. But now what I can do is I can quickly either just come here, maybe mask off a couple selections, and then maybe add my little gizmo here and make some big changes like this. And then come through, and if I go ahead and say, we're done, this is the change I want, I'm going to go ahead and click Proxy Pose one more time. Now you're going to want to give it a second, especially if it is a much larger file, because what it's going to do is it's going to recall all of those details. And now here's my change. Now, I kind of broke his neck here, but that's okay because we just did it real quick, fast, and in a hurry. I'm going to Control Z this back, and I'm going to show you that this also works with transpose masters. So before I actually come through and make big changes to meshes that have multiple subtools, I will want to proxy pose this first, reducing that mesh. Then I'm going to go to Z plugin, and just like you know before with T-pose mesh, I'm going to send this to T-pose mesh. And you can see here it brought that proxy pose and all of my other subtools along with it. So now I can come through. Let's create the mask lasso, maybe do a couple soften real fast. And now I'm going to come through here and actually start making a rotation. And let's make a big change just for fun. So I'm going to come through, maybe mask this section off and do some just simple mask softening. And then I'll also show one of my favorite tricks with the transpose line by hitting Y on the keyboard is actually I'm going to drag this out here so that it comes all the way through. In the middle, I'm going to press and hold Alt, and I'm going to make a little bendy tail. And then I'm going to rotate this around just like that. So see, I'm starting to make some decent changes, and let's even break it further. Let's go here, and let's just really push this thing, because that's what we do when we pose. If you're not pushing your pose, just break it. Don't be afraid. Let's go. So here, it's pushed. And then just to even go one more, I'm going to rotate them this way. Perfect. Now I'm done. So I'm going to go to Z plugin and go back to T-pose. And this is going to send everything back the way it was. And now I have my posed model. And now I'm going to go ahead and hit Proxy Pose. And now it's going to recall all of that detail back on my model. And I would like to point out that this is not a projection base. This is not the same thing as doing a ZRemesh and then projecting history or projecting to another mesh. This is a totally different workflow where it stores all of that information as you reduce that mesh, and then it brings it back. And you can see here, this super dense mesh was posed with ease in just a few minutes. And I didn't have to really worry too much about breaking stuff. This thing just came in really hot. So that's one method of using Proxy Pose. Now, I do want to call out one other method of using Proxy Pose with this other T-pose mesh I have here, which is totally dynameshed. I will like to say that this also does work with subdivisions. So if I do have the model, let me just reload this real fast. Actually, you know what? Instead of doing that, yeah, okay, I'll reload it real fast. Let's just go through here. I'm going to go to my downloads. And I have a file here, and then I'm just going to go ahead and just my merge sub Ds real fast. So this is one with subdivisions. And if I were to go ahead and do my proxy pose, so you can see here I have subdivision level 4 on all my models. I'm just going to go ahead and keep the details and do some reduction. Now you can see that the subdivisions go away. And then if I go ahead and make that change, so we'll just do a quick head movement just for fun. That seems to be the easiest way to do that. So come through here, make a head change. I do proxy pose, I send this back, and it's going to restore all that information, including the subdivisions. So this is a really effective way to come through and make big changes. Now, I am showing this as a posing element, but you can even take this one step further and actually just, make your character, maybe he's super chunky and you want to thin him out, or maybe you want to make their arms ridiculously bulky, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of ways you can utilize this feature, but just know that it's going to restore those subdivisions as well. So if you are working with subdivisions and you're like, oh man, I should have made a change that's nightmarish and now I'm going to have to rebuild my mesh, Proxy Pose comes in clinch. So definitely a good feature for that. Now, what I'm going to do next is just showcase real fast that this also works with the skeletons that we can build using Z-Sphere rigs. So I'm going to turn perspective off, and I have a model up here, and I have a couple examples, but I'm going to start with a new one. So the preferred workflow that I'm going to recommend is always keep a T-pose version of your model, and just duplicate it with Control-Shift-D or Command-Shift-D if you're on Mac. And then you're going to come through here with Proxy Pose. And again, if I did a setting that I really, really liked, I can just go through and let's say, like, let's do keep details at 11, and let's reduce that mesh. And let's say something like that. I'm going to solo that for a second. Well, that's a little much. So let's actually reduce that back. Let's come down here. You really don't have to push it too far. So let's say I do like this and I snap back out of Proxy Pose. If I ever need to recall that setting, instead of trying to find that slider, just push that button and it just retains that slider information. So now that I have a T-pose version of my subtool of this example, what I can do is I can go to my skeleton and I'm going to come on down here to adaptive skin. And I want to ensure that the adaptive skin is set to 1 density and 0 Dynamesh resolution. And then I'm going to go to rigging and I'm going to select my mesh. And if you hover over your indicator, you can actually tell which one you should be working with. So this one right here is going to be my Dynamesh version. And then I'm going to go ahead. I have solo mode turned on, so you can see there it is. I'm going to go ahead and say bind with mesh. And now if you utilize your Z-Sphere rigs, I can actually come through and use this to pose my character. So I can actually quickly and effectively come through. And Z-Sphere rigs are really easy to build. They're not too complicated. And we can always do like another episode just on Z-Sphere rigs. There's a lot of information, but you can see it's having some really cool effects as I just grab through these different chains, which is the way you want to actually look at this, is you want to really look at, don't grab the Z-Sphere itself because that's kind of like the joint that connects. You want to grab the actual chain between them to give you that animation. So I could come through, move its leg out, maybe just a little bit, rotate it in. And so it's a really fast and effective way of posing. Then when I'm done with this, what we need to do, now I kind of push this hard, so don't mind it if it breaks, is that if I hit A, it's going to showcase that preview. And then I'm going to go up to my adaptive skin and say make adaptive skin. And this is going to create that copy of that pose. And the reason why you would want to do that is if you go back to rigging, so I'm going to hit A again to showcase the rigging method, and I just unbind this, it resets my pose back to the T-pose state. So that's a really great way to start doing multiple poses, and then you just kind of plop them up at the top. But once we have this, now we can come through, and we can actually go to our subtool, we can copy it, and we can put it back into our mesh, which I believe is this guy right up here. I have all these different versions now. Where is he? See this one? Yep, this is the one. Pretty sure it's the one. Is that the one? I have so many rafters here. Let's see here real quick. I think that's the one. Yeah, let's go with that guy right there. I'm going to go ahead and paste him in there. And now with this Proxy Pose version, I can go ahead and go to geometry and say overwrite, and it's going to show me the model that works with that mesh. The other ones will be grayed out, and that's because of vertex order. If you change the Proxy Pose amount, you're changing the vertex order, and in order for this to work, you just want to make sure that the vertex order is the same. So that's why it's important that the slider information will remain the same once you find something you like, because then you can create multiple poses. And I'll go ahead and click that one, and you can see here it threw my very sloppy rig on, and then I just say, okay, bring that Proxy Pose back, and now I have that model there, and he is ready to go. So this is a really good and effective way to do posing, to get big changes happening to your mesh and making life really quick and fast for you. Now that was this Proxy Pose feature.
That looks really cool.
Yeah, right. I'm loving it more and more. Z-Sphere rig has been around for like a long time. But what's interesting is I find that I'm going back to Z-Sphere rigging, just how effective it is to take heavy, dense meshes, reduce them, and start manipulating them. So it's a lot of fun. Now, The next feature that I really want to showcase is called Drop 3D. So for those of you who don't know, just a really quick down and dirty history is that ZBrush was built on a 2.5D platform. That's a digital painting program using depth. So what we've done is, because this program is based off of that technology, we gave some love back to that technology and we upgraded it a bit. So with Drop 3D, which is located under Documents, so I'm going to go ahead and just dock this document over here on the right-hand side. As you can see here, there's a new button called Drop 3D and with some different sliders. Now, what happens is when I'm coming through and I want to make some changes to, let's say, this model right here, maybe I want to do some different cuts. What I can do is I can actually drop this into that 2.5D space, which is totally different than going up and hitting edit and dropping out of your 3D element. This is actually going to just drop it into a 2.5D space that now I can come up to the simple brush. And for those of you who are like, man, the simple brush, like I never use it. Down here at the bottom, you have all these 2.5D brushes. And these brushes are what we utilize to make some big changes. So I can actually do a single layer brush, adjust maybe down the size. I can actually turn on or off color if I'd want. And let's say I want to cut like a scribe line here. I can go to Z sub and just pick a generic alpha, let's say alpha 6, which is one of my favorite. I'm going to go ahead and press Control and hold that down as I drag out a couple lines. That's pretty messy. So I'm actually going to hold Shift to give me a straighter line. Maybe do that twice. A little bit of a straighter line right here. And then if I hit W, ooh, yay, just broke it. Cool. Let's actually pop out of this for 1 second and pop back in. So I'm going to pop out of there. You know what? Ooh, what happened? Let's go back in time. Yay, ignore, start over. So I'm going to drop 3D. I'm going to pick that new single layer brush. I'm going to go ahead and do a sub, and then I'm going to go ahead and like just do some quick scribing. Oh, this is really ugly. I really apologize. Paul did a much better job showcasing this yesterday. Yay. But here's the thing. I
actually posted the link to your guys' presentation yesterday.
Perfect. I'm going to do the same. But here's the thing. When I pick this up, this is the most important part. So there's better artists out there that can handle this than I. But with this subpixel right here, this slider is now utilizing the actual Sculptris Pro algorithm to make those changes possible. So when I go ahead and pick that up, you'll notice that it masks everything out. If I turn on the wireframe, you'll now see those changes happening in a Sculptris Pro method. So really think of this as like I have something that's super low mesh, but I want to add detail and I don't want to subdivide and I don't want to attempt what I just did, which is drawing really weird scribes by hand. I could come through here and actually start making things a little bit easier. So now before I clear this mask, what I would like to point out is this is where Adjust Last will really work for you. So if you do want to actually like push it in further or actually inverse that cut, you can do that. And then once you're done, just clear that mask and you are good to go. Now, what makes this more powerful than that is the fact that we also added geometry changes that can be added to the 2.5D workflow, which was not possible before. So for example, let's say I have an IMM brush, which, you know, I'm using a lot to like maybe do some details. So I'm going to go BI and then let's say something with like the machine brush. And now
what's IMM?
IMM is multi-mesh, sorry. Wow, I just totally broke myself. Wow, I totally just broke my brain. Sorry, give me a second. Insert multi-mesh. There we go.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So with the insert multi-mesh brushes, what we can do now is we can actually call specific geometry in that 2.5D mode. So let's say I have this nut here that I want to add, but I don't want to be dragging them out like I do with the insert multi-mesh and then trying to use this and place it where I want. I know I really want to have it on this face here. I'm going to back this up just for a second because I don't like that line. So now what I can do, what you could do before is I can go to brush and I could say with this nut 02 selected, go to brush and say to mesh. And this will bring me a new tool over here in my tool palette. So then when I go back to my scanner, and now I'm going to say, okay, let's go to document and let's go to drop 3D. Now I can come to that brush and I can actually say, you know what? I actually want a radial part of this brush. And real fast, what I would also like to call out is when you do select from a from an IMM brush, go back to the standard brush. It's just easier that way. And then we'll come in and hit drop. And now pick that, again, pick that mesh, which is now like a brush. and then I can actually drag out a bunch of them. And then if I hit move up here at the top, I can position those where I want.
So it's not like a sub tool. It's like actually like a brush. And
yeah, it turns a subtool into a brush that now I can use.
Okay.
And now I can actually press and hold control and drag and actually apply like some depth. And you can see there's a little bit of shadow happening on the actual element itself. So that means that it's hovering above. I can actually press and hold control and dig that into the mesh. And then when I drop this, so I'm going to come up to the drop 3D, I'm going to lower that subpixel down a little bit, say something like, let's just go 1.0, which the lower the number, the more dense it's going to be. Notice that my active points at the top is only 504. When I pick that back up, that jumped to 441,000. And if I look at that wireframe, it's capturing all that detail exactly where you want that detail to be.
Wow.
So you can make very specific dense changes with detail on your mesh with a very low resolution mesh, because this mesh itself is not very, very dense at all. And again, with adjust slash, you can actually, we want to push those in or bring that out. So it's a new way to work with 3D and 2.5D workflow, which is super, super helpful. And again, Darren ended up sharing that link. So if you want a more in-depth version of it, we did one yesterday. Paul Gabriel goes through it and showcases Drop 3D really, really well. And the last feature that we did, which is also in the 2.5D workflow, was actually improvements to stencil. So I'm going to switch back to the Raptor, and we got a posed Raptor here, and he's looking beautiful. And so now, boy, if we come up to stencil, the old workflow that currently works in like the 2022 version of ZBrush and even the first 2023 version of ZBrush, and then back down, the old workflow was you couldn't just come on and turn stencil on. You actually needed to select an alpha that you wanted or import an alpha that you wanted. So let's say this little star guy right here. You would come up to alpha, drop down to transfer, and say make stencil. And then you get this screen here. And if you press and hold the space bar, you can actually scale or move the actual stencil where you wanted it to be. And then you can actually go to maybe stencil and repeat that alpha a few times, et cetera, right? So, and then you can also go to stencil wrap mode. So then as I move this around, you can actually see that it's interacting with that 3D space. And that's where my stencil is going to live. So if I scale this up even more, and again, trying to throw that over, you can see it's starting to wrap over that mesh. And this is a really great way to paint in any type of details where you would want it to be. So if you had specific alphas, you could easily paint stuff on there. You can even go up to stencil and say invert, and then you can invert and you can paint and you can see what's being protected and what's not. So based on the alpha, if it's a really strong alpha, you can get some really powerful designs quickly. For example, just real fast, if I come up to this texture right here, the new way of going about creating a stencil, instead of doing this whole element here, is just going up the stencil and saying, I actually want, so if I turn this off, I say from alpha, now I can pick any alpha that I have loaded in my alpha palette, and it's automatically going to let me come through. This was already preset, but now I just was able to go straight up to stencil, turn this on, pick my alpha, come through, and I can actually start going through and making these changes. And these changes also help on a sculptural level as well. So you can see here as I start sculpting a little bit, that if I were to turn stencil off, boop, there you go. You can see that it was utilizing that stencil to make those changes. So if you have really complex designs on a character, this is a way to go about it. But not only can you do this from alphas now what you can do is you can do this from specific IMM brushes. So again, we have a bunch of IMM brushes that ship with ZBrush. However, if you have custom IMM brushes, this will also work. You just come up to stencil and say from IMM. And then if I were to say, boom, I actually want different body part versions, give it a second. And I'm going to turn off wrap mode, turn repeat off. And then I'm just going to scale this back down so you can see all of those parts within that IMM brush are now alphas. But if you want a very specific IMM to be your alpha and not have all 20, 30, 87, etc., then pick the IMM brush that you want. So let's say I want to actually go back to, let's just go to something different in time, the spaceship one, because I'm working on a spaceship. And then what I do is I'd actually pick the version that I want. So I would say this PM3D sphere 3 _ final. I would pick this one, and then I would come on up to stencil and say one item, just the one item. And then I'd say from IMM, and you'll notice that it actually is showing the brush that I had selected. So I click that, and now I could pick a paintbrush, and again, move this on over, maybe turn this on wrap mode. So go up to stencil, there it is, wrap mode, maybe give it a better resolution, maybe duplicate it a couple times, whichever works, find a different spot for it. And then again, I can start painting and sculpting on that application. So it's a really great way, really pushing that hard there, but hopefully that really showcases the point. So you could do a lot of really neat stuff with it. And that's stencils. Any questions so far at the moment? Because I feel like I've just thrown everything at everyone.
Well, not here on the.
Here, let me check mine real quick.
Just a lot of excitement. That's for
Yes.
sure.
Somebody
Awesome.
was telling, or somebody was writing that it feels weird when Paul is not on a show where new features are being shown.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, Paul's he's usually there. We did the main ZBrush presentation yesterday. So actually real quick, what I'll do, I'm gonna do like a little quick matrix glitch here, and I'll just load up real fast, and I'll showcase that.
Yeah, we just posted the links as well.
Mhm.
Cool. Let me repost it in my in the one I did as well, just so that it's there. I'll go ahead and actually share this one, and I'll copy it, and then I'll put it in here. So for anybody can go through. After stencil, can it rotate the alpha? Yes, absolutely. You can rotate. So when you're in stencil mode, so let's say from alpha, and then let's go through and say from alpha, and let's just do this one so you can really see it, and I can scale this up. So the options here, if I hover this and press and hold the space bar, it'll say move and rotate. So you can see that it's actually rotating around that model, and we're not wrapping
that's
yet.
neat.
You
That's
can
very
rotate
cool.
independently, and then you can scale it as well. And
That right there is such a cool thing that I have not seen in any other projection-like features in any program.
Yeah, this is one of those golden gems in ZBrush that like came out so long ago, and then we used, like, a lot of artists use it for a hot minute, but there's so many new ZBrush artists that only really know ZBrush as a 3D sculpting application, but there's so much in depth with the actual 2.5D settings and some of the other features that just, you know, they've been there and they work out really, really well, but new features come, and so sometimes older features get kicked. And these are some of the favorite ones that we love on the team. So we were like, man, it'd be really awesome if we like improved on this feature that is really going to just help artists get more of what they want. Especially, again, with this stencil feature, this wrap mode right here, I'm telling you, this wrap mode, I've had a lot of questions like, how do I get this level of detail here on this, something like this dinosaur? And I actually want to repeat that alpha because I want smaller ones. And this is a repeatable alpha. So I can scale this all the way up, come through and start moving this, find the good projection point that I want. And then again, as I come through, I'm making some crazy changes because that's like the intensity of 100. Good job, Ian. But as I'm going through and I'm utilizing these massive changes, I can rotate this around and remove this. And this also does work symmetrically. So if I did have symmetry turned on, which I'll turn it on, and I'll come through and I'll make that change and I'll start coming through, you'll actually see that it is populating on the other side. So this is such a really cool feature that is very, very helpful. And if I wasn't using a mouse today, it would look a lot cleaner than that. Please believe me. So that is the stencil workflow as well, which is really cool. And then I'm just going to real quick check, make sure. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, cool. And then a couple things that we added just for convenient workflow, but honestly, it might sound like the smallest thing in the world, but I promise you, when you start utilizing it, it's going to make a big difference because I find the small things make the biggest differences in my life. And that is with materials and with lights. Okay, if I'm like ready to set up a scene in ZBrush and I turn this light off and I come in and I make this a rim light, so I'm going to kick this to the back and I'm going to put this rim light on here, and then I put this light up in front, I'm coming through, and then my art director, my boss, my brain says that rim light is huge or massive. or I don't know what I did, or I made a change, and now I'm trying to figure out where that change is, we can actually undo our light setup and then start redoing. So you can step back. It's like its own personal history that you can actually come through and undo a bunch or redo a bunch. Again, might sound really small, but believe you me, like I immediately started using this when I started doing some lights, especially when I fine tune lights, where I'm coming through and I'm like, do I like this one or do I like this one? And I'm like, do I like this one or this one, this one or this one? I'm indecisive. This is super helpful for me. So it could be my just crazy millennial brain, but here we are. This is what we do. And same thing with materials. If I go to material up at the top and I come up here, we have our copy material, our paste material. But now if I come through and say, I start making changes, let me go back to my light real fast and say undo, no, redo, because I need to turn this one back on. Okay, so I have this. And now I want to make some material changes. Same thing. This works with Redshift materials, matte cap, standard materials that are all in ZBrush. If I start, maybe dumbing down the specularity, the transparency, now you can't see the change because this guy actually has something else. So I'm going to come through here like this. If I start really dropping down maybe the diffuse, pushing the ambient, adjusting color bump, and I start really like making a bunch of changes, even noise radius, like a lot of changes that are just happening. And then I'm like, I don't remember what I did, but I don't like this. Then I can actually come up here at the top and start undoing and stepping back and saying, oh, you know what? This was actually a good setting. This is too much. Let me redo that. And it puts those settings back. So it's just a little thing that I think really becomes helpful, especially when you're starting to build your own materials and fine tune things. So very simple. But again, I really like it. I think it's a great feature. And so that's really all the changes that happened on the ZBrush side. I'm on a PC, but there was another change for text max slider. So go check out that link that was shared to find out that slider. Actually, there was one more change real quick, and that was with Scale Master. So Scale Master right now, if I were to set scene scale and push this to 6.3 millimeter, because I'm going to do some 3D printing, and well, that's really small. So I actually want to then increase the size, and resize this. Usually when you save this out, what would have to happen is when I reload this project file, I'd have to come back up here and say set scene scale. Now these numbers are actually physically changing the main numbers in the preference slider. So anything that has to do with measurements, it's actually being changed within this area here. So what happens now is with project files only, if I were to save this out, ZBrush will remember these actual set scenes settings. So if you want to come back and make changes and you don't want to reset the scale of your scene, a project file will remember all of the settings that you did. So then you can come back anytime and you can adjust those, and you don't have to come back through and reset your scene scale, etc. So again, another really small thing, but for me as a 3D printer enthusiast, it's really, really helpful. So yeah, that's all the main features. Now, real quick, I promised one more thing, and that was my go-to settings for ZRemesher. And so I'm just going to knock those out real quick. But basically, so here you can see I have my mesh, and I have a little point at the top. So this was just done with a basic Z-sphere within ZBrush. And now I want to actually remesh this to get some clean topology, send it over to Cinema 4D, and blow this marshmallow up using that new balloon feature that Darren was so kind to showcase. So what I can do to get this to look really, really good really quickly, and again, I'm going to duplicate because I like to play with my settings in ZRemesher, so I'll duplicate to a different mesh. But what I'll do is I'll actually press and hold Control-Shift, and if you don't have polygroups, I'll use Slice Curve. I'll just slice this down the middle one time just to give me some polygroups and actually give me a nice clean line. Now, if your model doesn't, if it's more organic than this, you don't need to go through Slice Curve, but having polygroups where there's massive plane changes, those little things can be helpful. But even as something as simple as this, when I come to geometry and I go to my ZRemesher, what I want to do is just treat ZRemesher as like just small little steps. I don't want to throw too much. I'm sure everybody who's watching who's used ZRemesher has done this before, where they're like, keep groups, keep creases, do half, freeze groups, detect, polygroup, blah, blah. Like that's way too much, guys. It's way too much. You don't need to do that. Believe you me, I did it before, and it's like, don't do that. So the best thing to do is start kind of small. We'll do keep groups, and we'll take smooth groups down to 0, because when you keep groups and you have that at 1, it's going to shrink your mesh a little bit. So this will prevent massive shrinking, and you might still get some shrinking, but it'll be just a teeny bit. I'm going to keep adapt turned on, but what I'm going to tell ZRemesher is, look, I want adapt turned on because I want the quads to adapt to the changes of my mesh, but I want even quads. So adaptive size, slide that slider all the way down to 0. This is going to tell ZRemesh to give me as even as quads as possible. And then I'm at 61 active points. That's not a whole lot. So I'll just start at like maybe target of 5, maybe target of 10. But depending on how dense your mesh is, this number, it's okay to start at 20 or 25, even 30. It's okay to start there, but start with something that's going to give it a chance to be successful. So if this was at like 600,000, I might start at 20, just to give you that kind of insight. But for here, we'll start at 10. And then that's it. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to hit ZRemesher, and you're going to watch right now as it comes through and it organizes that it's going to take my poly groups. And now look at this mesh right here. These are all really even, straight quads. It's doing some wrapping around here. If I wanted to change how this was looping, same thing kind of that the Forger update got. We do have a ZRemesher guide that we can come through and say, I want these loops to come through here, maybe come like this. Okay, great. And then I'll half this and I'll ZRemesh that, and I can drop that. But I'm controlling how even these quads are. And this is really nice. And if you want to just see how low you can go, hit the retry button, cut that in half, maybe go lower. But you can see this is super low. And I can now send this relatively clean mesh on over to Cinema 4D and then start using it for animation and stuff like that, so really start blowing stuff up. So there are some really cool workflows. And I only did a couple settings. That's it. So a really cool little trick. And then, of course, too, you can add your subdivisions. And then if you duplicated like I did, you could just go down to Subtool, Project, and Project All. Project that detail back. Or you can actually do a history state. So something like way back here in time, Control drag up here, or Control tap, at the top, get that history point, slide it all the way back here, maybe give it just a little bit more luck with some subdivisions, and then project history and here. Now, this is a little too low. So, of course, the geometry changed too much. So I'm getting this little breakage here, but you can just see how clean this mesh is. So at some point, this is too low, but I can step it back one and then maybe do project history here, step up, and then boom, much cleaner.
Dude, this project history thing, the control tap thing, it's freaking witchcraft.
Right? Yeah, I super love it, man. So yeah, when project history came out, no joke, it changed my whole workflow from doing a lot of duplications. So it saves time, especially when you have like a ton of subtools. Like my average project is probably between 40 to 60 subtools, depending on what I'm working on. So, that project history really comes in clutch. So, all right, let me just check my chat real quick. Boom.
Actually, I have a question for you, Ian.
Yes.
So one thing that I watched you and Louis and Paul doing a lot is so when you created those lines to guide ZRemesher, you didn't draw a full circle, but 2 semicircles.
Yes.
Why is that?
Okay, great question. So in my experience, you don't need a lot to give you what you want. If I wanted to do this and come through, I could get something that looks relatively close, but then right here in this little bubble in space, sometimes this is where you'll get like n-gons or little like poles that will show up. So that can cause problem, and I don't want that one right there. So here instead, I really am just telling ZRemesher, look, I need an edge loop to flow along this line here. And because of the way this shape is, this actually is just giving me enough information to come through, and it will try to complete the loop as you go around. So you don't need to give it a whole lot. You don't need to make a full circle. So with something like, let's say, an eyeball. So if I were to actually come through and say like this anime demo head here, this is where I would say this is where I want the start loop, and then this is something that I want this, right? Now, let me actually get rid of this control history spot so you can see a little bit clearly. come through here. So this is saying I want an edge loop to flow here, and I want this edge loop to flow here. ZRemesher is smart enough to understand that if there's not enough space between here and here, this is where it's going to try to connect everything. So if I were to do this and then maybe add a little bit of edge flow here and here, it just seems to give ZRemesher a better fighting chance to get you what you're looking for. So if I'm going to kick this up, this is 106,000. So I'm going to call this, we'll call this 30 for fun. And then I'm going to go ahead and say, I like to do keep groups anyway, knock it down to 0, even if I don't have different poly groups because of that shrinking. And then again, adaptive size 0. I'm going to ZRemesh this. And so those guides are intelligent enough to know that, look, that's kind of where I want my ring to happen. And then if it's not enough information, then, you know, I'll try to extend it a little bit more. Maybe go stroke, lazy mouse, maybe turn this up just a bit. And then maybe here I'll drag this up a little bit more and a little bit.
This is like totally changing like how I think about ZRemesher in Cinema 4D, because
same here.
I've always sort of been like, you know, a slave to getting it as close, as accurate as possible, right? So I'm always like going in messing with like tangents and points and positions and all that stuff. And seeing that like you don't even have to do a closed loop and that you're roughing it in, I'm just like, what?
Yeah. The other thing,
that's right. Just like a year ago.
Yeah, the other thing too that I would like to call out is this curve strength slider. It's set to 50, and this is telling ZBrush 50% pay attention to the curve slider, 50% ignore it. So if I really want to make sure that these curves are being paid attention to, the strength curve slider, knock that up. Tell it really pay attention to it, like almost like adhere to this line, and then that's going to help out a lot more. So I'm going to actually say say half. I'm going to even give it less at this point. I'm using a mouse, so look at my crazy strokes. I'm going to go ahead and do ZRemesher. And it really like it put here, this area. Now I got a couple like really odd, weird shapes here, but as a quick example, these curves can really, really help you out. There's an artist named, he goes by SK or Sakaki, and he uses these curves a lot because this was a really great way to control stuff. But again, too, not doing this, you can absolutely do this. There's nothing wrong with doing this, especially if you try it the other way and it doesn't give you super clean results. But you can see here, like it did pay attention to this area, but then up here, it's starting to get a little funky dunky. So maybe at that point, I would back this up and maybe say, you know what, give me a control line, something like that. And then you could try that. So you definitely try both ways, because whatever gives you the best results is going to give you what you want. So ultimately, there's no wrong way to eat a Reese's, as they say, but there's definitely like start small, then work your way up. That's what I recommend.
That sounds great. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Gonna try that in Cinema 4D as well. All right. So I don't have any more questions here on our chats. What about you, Ian?
Looking at my chat now. Let's see, getting closer to ZBrush being the only tool you need for modeling. Let's see, I don't think that's it. Undo material. I just use Skin Shade 4 and then set the material. Then should do the rest. Yeah, but if you want to isolate or change that material to something a little bit more and you're playing around with it, I definitely recommend playing around with materials in ZBrush. Creating your own materials can be super helpful. I find Skin Shade 4 to be a little too bright, so I even adjust it a little bit, maybe knocking down specularity, and it gives me a little bit more clear. But if it's there if you need it, that's the whole point. And then, is there no limit to the undo redo? The limits to the undo redo for the materials and lights, I believe, is set to the project. So if you close the project down and then open it back up, I believe those options go away. I believe it resets each time. So just while you're utilizing the project. But yep. All right, that is it from my side.
That is it. Oh, that's very cool, Ian.
Gosh,
super great,
guys.
So I'll take the screen, and I think this has already been the longest stream I've ever done.
The longest.
Yeah. So I mean, we had 2.5 hours.
Oh, I can go another hour. What else?
Yeah. All right. So let me adjust this a little bit. So here we go. You can also see that a few people here on the stream already had to leave. Ellie is not with us anymore, and Noseman also had to leave. But hey, we are still there. And yeah, wrapping up the show. So in case you just came in late here, or you want to rewatch the stream or parts of the stream, you can go to the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. And here you will find the recording of it and recordings of many other shows. And in addition to that, if you go to cineversity.maxon.net, you can find getting started tutorials for all of our applications. And this is super helpful if you are like a beginner in everything, but also if you already know ZBrush or Cinema 4D or Redshift or whatever and want to learn about the others. Then I want to promote a few of our future events. So Hashi is going to have another VFX and Chill show tomorrow with Seth and Michael, I guess.
Come join us. It should be a lot of fun. We're doing some ridiculously nerdy Dungeons and Dragons stuff, everybody.
Yay.
Woo woo.
That sounds great. And then also tomorrow we have another Ask ZBrush Live with Ian and Paul. And then on Monday, the next one, it's going to be demystifying post-production, as every Monday. And it's a new topic, make your 3D renders pop. Right. And then next week on Thursday, we're going to have another Maxon color, and then it repeats. And yeah, the last thing I want to share is this side. It's the Maxon Ask the Trainer exclusive wear store, where you can... Oh, I think I just plugged off my second monitor. Interesting. Must have
You're all good here.
Great. Okay, so yeah, you go to that store, and there is a coupon code that you can use. And I think Darren is going to post it, right?
Posted.
Yes. So you use that while you enter the site, and then you can order one t-shirt for free, and you only have to pay for the shipping. And now I need to have a look where my other Chrome window is. So here we go. That's the other one.
Whoa.
Great. Even greater. Yeah. So here we go. All right. So let me just switch to here. And let's say thank you again for watching. To everyone, also, especially to those who are hanging out with us until the end. So we are still not alone here on the stream.
This is so awesome,
also,
Chad, Hashi, Ian. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Totally
You're all wonderful too.
Yeah,
I love
guys
you all.
killed it. 100%. Hearts.
Perfect. So, yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Also, I want to say thank you to Dr. Sassi, because he's the person who's usually doing all the timestamps for our videos, and he's going to have a lot of fun with this one. So just
thank
say
you, Dr.
hi
Sassi.
to Dr. Sassi. Hey, when you're watching this, we're sorry.
No one tell him how long it is.
All right.
This chaptering, I'm just going to copy and paste it on the ZBrush channel.
It's also good to give the tip in the end to watch it at double speed. Well,
yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Sorry.
Also, we sound like way snappier and more intelligent. We've got the knowledge right there.
Yeah. All right, everyone. So, looking forward to see you next time. Check out the other streams, as I already said, and see you next time.
Bye, everyone. Have a good one.
Everybody.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye there.
Bye.